Okay, we're gonna tackle DAK. Those of you who watch my non-game videos may have seen glimpses of this setup already. I was playing Operation Compass. Now, my history with DAK is kind of interesting because the North Africa campaign, out of all World War II stuff, ground stuff, is sort of, you know, the one that I'm most interested in, most excited by. I don't know why. It just is. And it was sort of the replacement for something like Campaign North Africa, in my view. Something of that size and scale and scope and whatever. Obviously, there are other games that I really do enjoy on the subject. Desert Fox and Trail of the Fox combined is really cool. Covers a greater area because it covers the trip up into Tunisia and whatnot as well. The SCS Africa, the first edition. This is the first edition of DAK. Now, out of all the OCS games, I would rather have DAK 2, but I don't think it's going to make a hell of a lot of difference because I'm going to be using Series 4.3 rules, which I got out of Third Winter. I don't know if that's the latest I have. I think it is. That's why I went and grabbed it, but it's hard to tell. Some bright spots on it are the Korean War. The Korea OCS is earlier than this because it has rules for retrofitting Korea to this. The reason I don't think it's going to make much of a difference is this is using version 2.1i. I don't think DAK 2 didn't come out that much later. It may have come out under version 3 rules, but version 4 was a significant shift in terms of what a number of the mechanisms work like. And I think there's some streamlining in play. I am not going to give you an intro to the core rules of OCS. Although there's a significant shift since I did the last read-through of the rules, which was, I think, in Reluctant Enemies. You know, paging through and looking at all the stuff is not going to be helpful to the viewer, particularly. You can get the core idea of the game in terms of the rules by looking at those Reluctant Enemies rules. It might serve some value to me. I've read these, tried reading them a second time. I read them, you know, over the past couple of weeks, and I tried reading them a second time, and I just decided, you know, I can't do it. I found myself, I was playing the Compass training scenario, and I found myself having to flip through the rules and find stuff, and really having very little idea of what to do and how to do it. That throws you into a conflict right away, which this scenario will not. I will be going over the DAK specific rules, and again, DAK 2 may have come up with different rules. They may have different values for some of the counters and stuff. That's okay. We're just looking at close enough, right? Let's see. Yeah, so I found that I completely screwed up my Compass scenario by using artillery. Now, this is something I knew from OCS. Don't use artillery, but there's also your attacks won't be very successful unless you use artillery. Because essentially what you have to do in order to conduct a successful attack is you have to disorder the enemy. And to do that, you need to do barrages. And to do barrages, you have a few choices. You have boats. Well, there's very little naval aspect to this game of DAK. Maybe in DAK 2, the boats were handled more specifically. But they're very, very abstracted here. I didn't see any counters for boats. Well, with one exception. There's an Italian boat here in Tobruk. It's sunk. It just counts as an artillery piece, essentially. I don't know if it uses ammo. It should. Normally, boats wouldn't have to use supplies off the map, which makes them very powerful. There's airplanes, which also don't really use supplies off the map in the same way. Air power is a it does, but very little. Air power is a very efficient way to deliver barrages, especially from really well-developed air bases, where you're able to refit a lot of planes at once for the same cost that you would at a tiny little airstrip where you can only refit a couple of planes. And then there's artillery. And there's tons of artillery in every OCS game. And if you try to use it, you will be fucked. Yes, you do have to use artillery to some degree. Now, my impression was that the 4.3 rules were supposed to have, from what was written in the designer's notes, which are very good, was supposed to have reduced some of the artillery costs a little bit, make it a little easier. Because one of the big complaints about OCS all along was, yeah, artillery is really, really vital to your attacks, and it can be very helpful in defense as well. Because what you do is you interrupt the attacker's units, like you disrupt the attacker's units so that they're not really capable of attacking anymore either. Well, maybe, maybe not. But I had a whole lot more artillery, and I fired it all off kind of in my first turn, and ended up getting into a death spiral in terms of like, well, I didn't have enough ammo, enough resources in supplies left to even conduct the attacks that I wanted without using the internal supplies of the units. And I thought, okay, that's fine, I'll just refill those. Well, you end up paying twice the cost when you do it that way. So, my second turn, my Brits weren't able to attack at all, and that just, you know, and it was looking like, yeah, maybe I can still win the scenario, but I'm going to be operating on such a shoestring, it's just no good anymore. So one of the things that one tends to do in a lot of war games, you got a lot of good odds, you throw them in and you hit. That's not wise in this game, because every unit that attacks, every artillery that you use to improve your chances of disordering the enemy, everything that you do is going to cost you supplies. Moving costs supplies as well. And it's just incredibly expensive. Now, it's been a while since I've played OCS, so I didn't really remember these lessons. But also, I think the scenarios that I played had supplies more available, or at least I found it easier to get them available where I really, really wanted them. Whereas here, I had a bunch of attacks to make, and I, you know, used what I had, thinking it would be, you know, I'd have enough to fight the scenario as perhaps it was meant to be fought or whatever, and it turns out that, yeah, I did not. Anyway, so I gave up Compass. The problem with that is I'm still not comfortable with sort of the core mechanisms of the game. However, I didn't feel like I was going to be really comfortable with the situation. I would have had to reset up or, you know, something else. And if I'm going to do that anyway, let's just start with the grand campaign. Because I thought, you know, if the Italian attack founders due to lack of supplies, that won't be that ahistorical. Well, I found something interesting out. The way the setup is, now it's possible for the Brits to set up as far forward as this. This is the Egyptian border with Libya. The goal that the Italians have to do is they have to cross this Mussolini line with a certain number of troops and then not retreat. And they have to take Sidi el Barani. There's nothing in the way. There's nothing allowed to be in the way. Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of units I could have put to defend that. There's notably, this guy maybe could have been up there or something, just to get killed. But honestly, there's essentially no defense that's able to stop the Italians in any way. And therefore, screw it, let's just, not waste units up there. It might have been worth it to try to drain a little bit of their supplies and give them a little bit of trouble, but fuck that. Okay. Let's save our units. So that was kind of a nice surprise. I'm going to be able to ramp up to the position where Compass happens. And Compass actually, this Piccadilly Circus here is where the Allied headquarters was. And essentially, they're making a push for Bardia. They're making a push to clear the Italians out of Egypt completely. That's their goal. Now, in the Grand Campaign, there's a sudden death victory if the Italians can take Mursa Matruh. There isn't a huge Allied force holding that. It's a tempting option. And maybe I'll try. But it does put the Italians into a position where they end up expending more than they probably have. However, that, or more than they can probably afford. Anyway, so I guess we can take a peek at what the components are. Obviously, 5 big maps, which is actually why I finally got this up here, was I thought about, gosh, after doing Central Front with these 5 tables set up out here, rather than break the tables down, which is, physical activity, and I try to avoid that, right? I wonder how close I am to the DAK maps. I don't know how many there are, 4 or 5, 6, whatever. I just didn't know. So I checked that, and it turned out there were exactly 5, which means this is sort of the perfect time to go ahead with this while I have something out here. The only problem with it, of course, is it's still winter time, which means I can't play at night, but whatever. These maps have a number of features that maybe are of some interest. We got these little port boxes, which represent spaces on the board, tracks to deal with any damage to the ports, a special track, a couple of special tracks for Greece here, which, let's see, we got the Greek campaign status track as to when the invasion of Greece happens and what's going to happen with that. And then the Allies will be forced to deploy forces into Greece. And then once Greece actually falls, they'll get some of those forces back. Something kind of interesting up here. We got spaces for dead units, for units that are removed from the game. I don't know if I want to keep removed units there, unless they're going to come back. I'd rather bag things, get them out of my sight. But we have this training track for Allied divisional components that come in and are not really at full effectiveness. And basically the impact of that, the main impact is that they have an action rating penalty. We'll see the others there. Action rating is incredibly important. It's sort of like a morale value, a true quality valuation. The higher that is, the better chance you're going to get of getting surprise, and you get a better modifier on the combat results table. So it's pretty sweet. You have a monthly turns for each of the years of the campaign, and then in each month you have these little half-week track here. I don't remember what the active, inactive boxes mean for Tripoli and Crete. We have them in Tripoli as well. Look at that in Sicily. I think it has to do with air units, but now I'm a little confused because Tripoli's, I don't think their air units are important. A lot of the locations on the game have these capture award markers, which indicate the first time you take something, well, no, if you take something and maybe some conditions are met, which might be the first time you take it, it might be that the opponent just has to have held it for a couple of months, whatever, you get a bonus out of it. And one of the bonuses there is kind of interesting. The Brits get some captured Italian tanks, which they get to form armored, not great obviously, but armored units out of. Because again, both sides are actually operating on very, very limited forces in this game. And supply is also a limitation. We'll hit that for a little bit. So Allied supply is actually huge here. But you don't have a lot of trucks, so it's hard to get to wherever you're trying to get to if you're not defending, Alexandria itself, right? For the Axis, they don't have infinite supply in Tripoli, but as per the description or discussion of the game, I used new tape, by the way, but this sort of not very sticky tape is indeed not very sticky. I don't know how much it does for me, but I tried using paper clips, thinking they might work better, and they're not really holding up either. The idea is to not have these maps shift, and I don't think it's going to succeed in that very well. That's life, right? Where were we? Yeah, so the Axis ends up with supposedly essentially unlimited supplies showing up in Tripoli, like more than they can ship into the front with their trucking. We'll see. What else do we have? So I pulled the series rules out of a different game for this. There are 3 volumes of rules for DAK. Yeah, but most of them are scenarios, which is kind of cool because there are smaller scenarios you can play on this if you're not able to cope with, the whole campaign. We'll see if I'm able to cope with the whole campaign, to be honest. I hope to. If you don't have enough space and you want to play the whole campaign anyway, it's not very likely that the Axis is going to get to map E. So they created a little abstraction of map E and allow you to go work without it. You really can't go without everything else, although you could conceivably move the focus and be playing the game on just a couple maps at a time and have the other maps being handled kind of off board. It's kind of interesting because unlike those big East Front campaigns where the front itself is so huge, the front in this is fairly small. The amount of distance covered over the course of the campaign, back and forth again, is quite large. So most of this map will not be in use at any particular time. So there are things you could do to kind of simplify your situation. And there are mileposts in place at every so often in order to help you track things. And you could keep track of a lot of the game on paper and maybe just have 2 boards that you're using at any one time. That would be kind of painful for the full campaign, but simply because you have the Italians wash in to Egypt. You have the British chase the Italians basically all the way back to near El Agila. And then you have the forces come back from El Agila, chase the Allies back past Tobruk, historically, to the Mersa Matruh area. A little bit of delay there and whatnot. but eventually sweeping all the way up, you know, to close to Alexandria here. What do we have here? There's Al-Amin. Just as a, you know, to give you an idea of where things are here. And then eventually that line breaking, and at the same time the torch landings are probably happening and everything, and the Axis just has to get the hell out. How do you do victory conditions for this? Well, as usual, Dean has his, just look at it and you should be able to tell kind of idea, which I love. It's probably more specific ones somewhere. We'll see what they are. But, you know, in essence, any attempt to impose victory conditions on a situation like this is going to be inherently painful. You saw that in Africa. You saw that in Desert Fox when I covered those games. This is more of an experience than anything else. You know, try to do what you can do. Now, in this one, it's actually physically possible to take Alexandria and beyond. Unlike in the Africa game I have, which I found, you know, really disturbing that the victory conditions, the ultimate victory conditions for the Axis are, of course, take Alexandria in that. And yeah, they maybe weren't absolutely physically impossible, but it was trivial to make them so. The Allies would have to basically help Rommel take Alexandria. So I've spent a lot of time talking without digging into the rules at all here. And since I'm going to mark this as instructional, I had better at least cover these guys. I had somebody kind of fuss about the fact that, yeah, my intros, you know, aren't really a way to learn the game. Yeah, I try to tell people that. You know, with a lot of my videos, I just say right up front, you know, look, somebody else has given you a better intro, a better how to play type of thing. That's not what I'm doing, but I do like the idea of distinguishing the introduction and actually looking at the rules from the playthrough, although some people find, you know, my first playthrough scenarios where I'm trying to come to copes with the rules of a game and whatnot, and demonstrating, you know, what is involved in the actions of the game in more detail than I will later on in the playthroughs. So in some ways, there's more instructional value to the early videos in the games. Sometimes. I don't know. I leave that up to those of you who watch these. I doubt that anybody's going to be watching my DAK 1 video to learn how to play the OCS. And to be honest, I'm not going to play very well. I can almost guarantee that. I have a lot to learn about the OCS. I've always had a lot to learn about it. But I'm back at step 1 now here, you know, even though I've played, I think only 2, right? I think I've only done 2 on video. I've played before. I played Burma before I videoed it, a little bit of it. But yeah, but this is the one that I wanted to do the most. This is why I keep buying OCS games. And you know what? If I don't like this, I stop buying them. If I really love this, the way Burma kind of caught me, Reluctant Enemies was a dud as far as I'm concerned. It was meant as an intro to the series, but it's too boring a situation. But if I have enough fun with this, hey, maybe I'll be tempted to play some of my others. Korea comes to mind as well. You know what doesn't? Blitzkrieg Legend, which I just know is going to be this horrendous start. And honestly, a lot of them are going to start in much nastier combat. What we have here is the Italians facing nothing to advance. That feels good to me. That feels like a good ramp up for the game. But if this doesn't absolutely like get me excited so that I'm playing another one within the next year or two, there's a good chance that I just stop playing OCS, and that I spent a lot of money on games that I'm not going to play, because the cost to learn is just really, really high. It's really high. And yeah. All right, I'm going to swap batteries, sit down, and start working through the scenario-specific rules. So before I do that, I've added some light, which might help. Oh shit, this battery's not good either. I'm going to take a moment, and now fuck. See, the battery's not charging, and this is probably why it's not there. I started charging batteries. Oh look, I did some dishes. I started charging batteries over here because that one works a little bit better. That outlet works a little bit better than most in terms of actually charging, but it doesn't. By the way, this is a Friday, so I'm hoping to get this done before I have to play Raid and go out. So I said there were 3 volumes to the rules for DAK itself. The first volume contains all the campaign scenario, whatever, all the game-specific rules. It also contains a bunch of scenarios in it. The second one contains additional rules, additional scenarios, most importantly, including, for whatever reason, the entire desert campaign as the final scenario, and a bunch of notes about the decisions made, keep checking the battery, in terms of the design of this itself, what options work and what not. Options are in here. And then the third one is really a charts and tables one, which gives you some useful stuff that, you know, hey, I was looking over the different tables here and talking about it, and what the hell, there's a lot here. So your randomized weather, which is kind of an interesting thing. It only happens on some maps at any given time. Terrain effects, charts, yeah. How many games have 2 terrain effects charts of this kind of detail? Yeah. List of costs for common rebuilds. And then a bunch of random events. There's going to be a random events sequence in here. I'm trying to remember. I seem to remember Burma had random events. Feels weird to me to have so many. And then here are a couple of distance calculations charts. There's 2 different types. One is, hey, how far am I away by road if I'm not dealing with anything? That's really useful between a couple of major areas, cities. I probably won't ever use it. But then there's this concept of AEPs, which actually are these. These are not mile markers. These tell you, these are a way of planes flying away from the coast to where they're not going to be interfered by enemy air power. Flying over the sea to another AEP to enter the map there. This is just a means of avoiding interceptions or whatever. So that is what those 3 are about. Since I'm using 4.3 rules, I'm using the 4.3 charts and tables instead of the original ones here, such as life. All right, let's take a look at what we got. So there's like in Desert Fox, there's a lot of unit substitution going on, where specific units are able to be built as either better units or to come in to be combined into a better unit. And you got some of that actually showing up over here. You'll see there's already units in the Allied dead pile. Now I put these all upside down. These are just rebuilds that are currently available, but I would have to either lose the British units or the Commonwealth units that are going to, it's like the Warsaw Pact and the Soviets, I'm going to be doing this all game, that are going to be, you know, as they're lost, I can then rebuild them as better units. But some of them are combines where you have to remove multiple units in order to get to that position. And then you can also just remove the unit. That's what I was trying to say. I'm getting old. Oh, geez. You know, I think about our two old presidential frontrunners who both seem quite a bit less, you know, astute than one would like. But we don't know. You know, but I was watching Andrea Mitchell, who, you know, was really a great foreign affairs correspondent. And that's what she loved doing. But, you know, she was not able to keep up with that. So they give her her own show. And, you know, the things that made her less effective as a field correspondent are even worse with her as like an anchor, you know, of a show. I mean, the only reason she's there is sort of the name that she's built up before. She's not really able to do the work. And it's the problem all of us face, and why, you know, after you get to a certain age, you think you should just stop. Unfortunately, it ain't that easy. You got to do something to stop. Okay, anyway. Here are some of the discussions on how to handle, if you've got like a much smaller table space, simulcast turns. This is a standard concept in OCS. It's not going to matter for me in solo. But basically, if one person's doing stuff that, you know, if the person who's active isn't going to be launching any attacks and isn't really in contact with the enemy, you can both take your turn at the same time. Standard marker sheets. Oh yeah, okay. We're just talking about what comes with the game. Okay. Make choices on the options. Okay, hedgehogs. There are some hedgehogs already printed on the map, which cannot be destroyed, reduced, or improved. Except Tobruk's are printed at level 3, and they're only level 1 until the 1st of April, 1941, because basically the Italians didn't maintain them very well. And this will happen no matter who's sitting on them, and, you know, it could be in conflict and whatnot, and they'll just improve. But otherwise, you can't build a hedgehog greater than level 1. Each player can build no more than the following numbers of hedgehogs during the course of the campaign. Hedgehogs that you capture from the enemy don't count against this total, which is going to be kind of funky. But essentially, the Axis has 20 hedgehogs they can build. The Allies have 20 they can build. And that's it. Now, they say hedgehogs captured by the enemy or later destroyed still count against the total the player has built. The limitation is on the number of starts that they built. So, at some point or another, I'll have to just, you know, create, once I'm interested in creating a hedgehog, I'll have to, you know, make a stack of 20 for each player and just start spending them off that way. Okay. Oh, this is worse. Okay, normally in the game, you can pay 1 fuel SP for a headquarters and all independent units under it. Get fuel for that. This does not apply. You have to pay for each unit individually for fueling. Yes, that's fine. Isn't it? No, that's not fine. Because there are markers that come in the standard OCS marker tray for fueling headquarters. And so I was using that rule. I was not using the DAK specific rule in my Compass game. It's not going to be a huge deal. Usually a headquarters isn't going to have a huge amount. But there are a lot of independent units in this game over the course of the game. So you could like really kind of cheat the supply power rules by doing this. They go into some options. Look, I'm not even worrying about this. These are options from back in 2.1i. They aren't gonna really fit well into the 2.3 rules. So we'll be playing with the 2.3 probably without any options. I'm not sure. So PAX replacements, not EQ replacements, can be used to rebuild units in the Tobruk Hedgehogs, even if they're adjacent to an enemy unit and not adjacent to a friendly headquarters. This can be applied to either Axis or Allied units, as long as the PAX is adjacent to the unit absorbing it and is inside the line of the Hedgehogs. Shipping calculation. They say don't use the optional rules. I don't know what the shipping rules in 4.3 are in terms of being different from 2.1i. Screw it. Whatever 4.3 is using, I'll use. But if it appears to be using this option, I'll fix that. The idea there was, yeah, basically that armored units are going to cost, the units with equipment are going to cost more to ship than unarmored stuff. So a half RE armored unit would cost a full point of shipping because the heavy equipment's a pain in the ass. I don't know. Turn labeling system, yeah, we're fine with that. Multiple terrain hexes, if there's multiple terrains in a hex, the defender gets to choose what terrain's in play. Road distance chart we looked at. Mile markers. Little mile marker system symbols along the coastal road show up every 5 truck. Okay, let's see if we can find one. Is that these things? I don't know what that is. Let's see what they're supposed to be. I didn't see them before, so. Oh. Yeah, it's those little teepees. Yeah, I'm never going to see them, so let's just forget about them. They're just convenience. Like I said, there's holding maps, Tripoli, Sicily, and Crete, and numerous boxes. Boxes like these represent a hex on the board, and they'll have the hex listed on them. Tripoli has a port capacity of 6, whereas Alexandria and Port Said are both unlimited port capacity. I think that's only as long as Suez is open, but I'm not sure. Crete and Sicily have infinite nominal dumps, which a player can ship air or sea. Tripoli is limited to the number of SPs a player sends there from elsewhere. Only German transport aircraft can fly SPs out of Crete's nominal dump to the map. Italian transports cannot. Both German and Italians can fly SPs from Sicily, though. Each holding box has an airbase capacity and refit capacity listed. Do they now? I'm looking for a holding box now. As opposed to, so there's Sicily and Tripoli. I kind of want it I kind of wanted to look for Crete. There's Crete. None of them are easy for me to see. So let's take a look at what we got here. Okay, so we got distances here, unlimited capacity, units awaiting shipment are considered to be in this box. Sicily has infinite supply dump. I don't see the airbase. Tripolitania's air bases have unlimited capacity and a refitability of 10 per turn, so there we go. I guess if it says something, it means it, and otherwise it doesn't. We should see something. I don't see anything in Alexandria there. They have air bases next to them. Port Said doesn't have anything. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they're talking about. Oh well. Let's look at Crete. Crete might say something. We've looked at all the others, right? Crete's air bases have, we have a capacity on Crete. We do not have one on Sicily? That can't be. Sicilian air bases have unlimited capacity and unlimited free refit. Yeah, okay. For some reason, Tripoli kind of counts as one of these. I don't know. Well, it's off map. Yeah, okay. So that's what we're talking about here. Oh, no combat units ever allowed in a holding box, air or ground. No enemy units can ever enter a friendly holding box. No combat is allowed. Yeah, I was going to say, wait a minute. I got combat units in Tripoli right now. The Axis controls Tripoli and Sicily at the start of every scenario, and these two boxes are under his control, he had no doubt. The Axis player also controls Crete as soon as the Greek campaign enters the termination box. The Commonwealth player can never use any of these three holding boxes, even Crete, before it falls. The holding boxes always have good weather. Tripoli to map movement. Okay, this is interesting because I think this is represented by these, and I read through this at one point, but I don't know what it is. All of the holding boxes are considered connected to the map via air entry points and shipping. In addition, Tripoli has a land-based connection the others do not have. Units can move from the map, hex A1935, which is El Aguila or whatever, to Tripoli and vice versa using Tripoli movement boxes. Only the Axis player can use the track. As is the case with the holding boxes, no combat barrages or enemy movement can happen. Units must make the trip through these boxes in move mode. Strap mode is already accounted for in the calculations making up these boxes. No unit can walk to the war in combat mode in order to save fuel. The units must be in move mode if they have modes at all. No unit can enter or move along these boxes in any phase other than the regular movement phase, nor can they take advantage of reserve mode to squeeze out extra movement. If the moving unit has 20 movement points or less in a move mode, place the unit in the box corresponding to its movement allowance. For example, a unit with a move mode MA of 8 would be placed in the 3 box. Okay. So move mode, yeah, this would go there, 6 to 9 would get me to there, and likewise if I was going in the other direction. Sure. If the unit, any MA in this case, wishes to move directly from the map to the track using its movement allowance, apply the 4 movement point per box cost to determine where the unit ends up. So if I was moving here and I had, say, 15 movement points left, yeah. 4 movement point per box. See, that doesn't seem to fit because this one seems to take 1 movement point, like if you count it, but like, so if I was moving from El Aguila, is this 19th? No, sorry. 1935 is actually at the edge of the map. If I was moving from here onto the map and I had 5 movement points, I would go to this box. If I had 4 movement points, I would go to this box, and 6, I would go to this. And so something's weird. If a unit has more than 20 movement points as a movement allowance, such as trucks, treat each, don't they have 14? No, they have 45. Okay. Yeah, it's truck movement for ground units. Treat each track as a big hex with a terrain cost of 4 movement points. If any unit wishes to move, yeah, so I don't know, what's up with that, but once on the track, the units automatically move 1 box per turn in the direction of the arrows of the chosen track. No unit can stop along the track or turn around and go back. So this is kind of weird, okay? If I have more than 20 movement points, I can traverse the entire track in 1 turn. Say I have 21. Nothing does, but but if I have 20 movement points, I go here and it takes me a full turn to make that next box. If I have 5 movement points, it puts me here, and then it's going to take me several turns to make the additional boxes. My movement allowance doesn't affect how far I travel. And I'm sure there's some kind of abstraction and magic going on here, but it doesn't feel right to me. Okay. Once on the track, the unit automatically moves 1 box per turn in the direction of the arrows. No unit can stop. There's no weather on this. For units starting in box 5, the last one before the box, place these units into hex 1935 at the beginning of the axis movement, and then they can move their full movement allowance on the map that turn, as well as change mode, etc. Units in the track are always supplied SPs expended to fuel units moving on the track, keeps them fueled until they exit the track's far end. So I only have to spend 1 fuel to get me onto the track, and then I don't have to, ensure that they have fuel with them on the track. Boy, this is going to take forever the way I'm going. Jesus. But yeah, it's kind of helpful because I'm not comfortable with all of this. The Tobruk anti-tank ditch. Okay, first, let's find anti-tank ditch and what it looks like. Anti-tank ditch is going to look like that. Remember, I read the rules generally without the game in front of me. And the only time I see the game in front of me is while I'm playing it, or while I'm going through this. Now, that's okay for the general rules, but for this. Now, what do those look like? Oh, here we are in Tobruk, and I can't tell. These are slopes. This is not anti-tank ditch. That's, okay. That's something else. Yeah. That, I think, is escarpment. Anti-tank ditch. It's got this brown and barriered line. Unfortunately, there's a lot of shit around Tobruk. Ah, there it is. Okay, so it's like a hex out. Now, what does that do? Yeah, that's a good, interesting question. What does that do? It doesn't determine the type of hex it is for closeness, and it halves any attacker going across it if it's chosen as the terrain feature. And it has a fairly high movement cost. Okay. Affects all units attacking across as per terrain effects at the both ends. The AT ditch follows just inside a wadi hex side. For attacks and movement across these hex sides, the combined wadi and Tobruk anti-tank is used. Do not simply add them together. There we go. Okay. They get nastier. Let's put it that way. Railroads. There aren't a lot of railroads going on in this game. And that's going to be a big deal, because that's going to impact how supply is handled. If you recall, in the OCS, railroads are how you generally get your trace supply. That's not going to work in this game. So they're changing that, but we'll get to that in a minute. The Axis can readily skip any concerns over his limited rail net, if indeed the term can be used. Does he have one? I mean, yeah, there's some over here. Wow. Okay. But otherwise, the railhead, the railroad tracks, these are unbuilt going up to Tobruk. And like in other games on the desert, the building of the Allied rail line to Tobruk is part of the campaign, honestly. He has rail cap and he can use on the railway around Benghazi, but its usefulness is strictly limited. For both Axis and Allies, points of interest. Okay. Points of interest, let's see if I can find one, are these little dots. They're considered detrainable hexes. Normally in a railhead, you need to like hit a town or something like that. The points of interest have enough infrastructure in place, even though they don't have an effect on combat or anything, that you're allowed to unload without a headquarters or an engineer or whatever you need. The Allied player has a relatively extensive rail net in the Nile Delta, in addition to the small Western Desert Railway. The Allied player has two separate rail caps, one for the Delta and one for the Western Desert Railway. Either rail cap can be used in the on map CE. Is that what it says? In hexes containing the railroad boundary on can be used in hexes containing the railroad boundary on map D, just west of Alexandria. The WDR cap can be used on either side of the boundary, and is the only Allied rail cap capable of carrying supply points. Which is not that big a deal because Alexandria has an infinite supply dump in general. The Delta rail cap can only be used on or east of the boundary and cannot be used to transport SPs. Using both rail caps in a single phase to move a load constitutes leapfrogging. So you can't use rail cap here to get you to there and then use different rail cap. Given that rail movement is infinite, I don't think you want to. Like if you had a unit that you wanted to rail move, I think you'd just use the Western Desert to cover both. So I'm not sure that needed to be said, but maybe rail movement changed between the rule sets. Okay. The unbuilt British Railway during the campaign, the WDR was extended from Mersa Matruh almost to Tobruk. Only Commonwealth player can build it. To build the railroad extension, you must use two New Zealand railway construction companies. These are the only units in the game capable of building the railroad. Now, notably, I have some Egyptian railroad units. I have like 3 of these. They're able to repair damaged railways, but that's all they can do. There's no SP cost for building this railway extension. At the most, 1 hex can be built per turn, even if they're both present. Place the railway company in the current railway hex and execute the following. If 1 company is present, roll a die. On a 6, it moves forward. If both are present, they automatically move forward a hex and advance the railhead. Rail construction cannot occur adjacent to enemy units, into enemy-occupied hexes, or if the railway companies are disordered or have moved in the current turn. Wow. I don't know if I'm going to finish this today. I need to break. So we're going to stop here at the Tobruk Bypass Road, and I'm going to take a little bit of time off. Okay, the Tobruk Bypass Road. Italian engineers' construction troops built a hard surface bypass road around Tobruk, following existing desert tracks. Rommel praised them. It becomes active on the 1st of October 41 if the Axis occupies or was last to move through each of these hexes. Let's see how that appears. I believe that's this dashed road here. We could look it up, but okay. Finishing the coastal road. Prior to the invasion of Egypt, the hard surface road from Solom to Sidi Barani is also, where's Solom? I don't know where Solom is. Solom's here. Fell into disrepair. One of the first tasks involving the 10th Army, Italian, after crossing the border and capturing Sidi Barani, was the resurfacing of this road and building of water pipelines to forward camps. This was needed for the advance on Mersa Matrua. We'll see why. Italians have trouble if they don't have good roads. Everyone else is kind of okay with bad roads. The road was barely finished for the Allied counteroffensive and was never used for its intended purposes. Before it's a primary road, the coastal road is a regular road. It activates after the 1st of December 40 if the Axis player occupies or was last to move through each of these hexes. And they're going to have a lot of trouble. Now, if they have Sidi El Barani, they can use port shipping to get in there. It doesn't have a huge capability. They can drive trucks full of supplies up to Sidi El Barani, but everything they put up there is at risk to the counterattack. And, you know, one of the big questions in this game is how effectively do you want to push on Mersa Matrua? You win if you take it. You win the entire campaign, which probably isn't realistic, but, and I'll probably just say, look, the Italians won, but we'll keep playing, even though they would have had to expend more to get there than they maybe historically did, but also, more importantly, by expending more effort, by maybe losing some units, losing supplies, etc., to get there, they may be in worse position to defend against the eventual Commonwealth counterattack. But honestly, what the Italians have on the map is probably not able to stop the Commonwealth unless you don't play with the Mussolini line rolls. Because basically the majority of the Italian force is going to have to be across that line. At least that's my thinking. So there's kind of a, we should go for it. Okay, the Suez Canal. And he goes into how originally this road building was done in a much more complex fashion, probably similar to the rail building, but it just didn't serve much purpose. Okay, Allied shipping in the Eastern Med has to come through the Suez Canal. What is the Suez Canal? That's an interesting question. So we got the Suez Canal marked here, and then we have this. Do we have some kind of distinguishment here? They don't talk about Suez Canal as a terrain type. So I don't know if this counts as part of the canal or And I have yet to decide. A few critical convoys were sent directly through the Straits of Gibraltar, but for the most part, tonnage delivered to the theater. Even if unloaded to Alexandria or Port Said, had to go through the Red Sea. Blocking the canal would be a strategic matter, which would threaten the entire Middle Eastern area of operation. The Commonwealth cannot use any Mediterranean port if a supplied Axis combat unit with a combat strength of 2 or more occupies any hex adjacent to the canal at the end of the Commonwealth turn. It takes effect on the next turn. If this occurs, the infinite dumps in Port Said and Alexandria immediately disappear, and no port inside the Mediterranean can be used for trace supply. Coastal shipping can still be used, but cannot transit the canal. When the canal is reopened, the infinite dumps return automatically, immediately, etc. I think I'm going to include this. Why not? I mean, look, if the Axis gets that far, things are pretty fucked up. Bridges. All roads and railroads are assumed to have bridges over any river or wadi that they cross. In hex wadis, certain key locations around Tobruk and Bardia, for example. Not seeing. Let's take a look at what wadis look like. Wadis are gray lines. Yeah. So here's a wadi as an example. But apparently there are going to be some, maybe these guys, I don't know. That doesn't really look like wadis, but had numerous coastal wadis. As these wadis cannot be made to conform to hex sides, they are shown as low hills within the hexes. Aha! I was going to say, they don't look really like wadis. Yeah. Okay, so this terrain type is low hill, and that's actually what it kind of looks like. Sure, it's a different, different shape, but just know that they're wadis. That's all. Minefields. Oh, let me check my batteries. Fuck, gotta take a break. Okay, mines are a big deal. Minefields cannot be built before January of 42 and cannot be built by the Axis in any event. The Allies, I don't know about that. The Allied player can build no more than 25 minefields during the course of the campaign scenarios. List how many are available at each starting point. The Axis can make use of 3.2E and 3.2F, that'll be following rules here, to emplace his own minefields. Okay. He just cannot make ones from scratch. If either side has some removed minefields on hand which can be resown, the scenario will list that number. No more than one can ever be built on a single hex. I assume that doesn't mean if a minefield is removed, it can't be put back in. Building a minefield from scratch costs 1 SP per hex and requires an infantry engineer or headquarters in combat mode. To accomplish, building is accomplished within the unit's hex. Takes 2 turns to complete, can be done adjacent to the enemy units. At the end of the first player turn of construction, place the minefield in the hex with its uncompleted pick and shovel side up. I guess we'll peek at these to show, hey look, they got 2 sides. Yeah, we needed to do that. At the end of the second player turn of construction, flip the marker to its finished. It would be wise then to get the friendly unit or units out of the minefield. The unit attempting to build or complete a minefield cannot move during any turn in which such construction is done. All right. A finished minefield does the following. -2 to the action ratings of units in such hexes. +4 movement points to the cost of leg movement allowance, and +10 to track or truck. Units can use Series Rule 6.1c. They can always enter a hex. Okay. I'm glad it tells me what that is, because the references into the new rule set are not accurate in general. Shift one column to the right on the barrage table for units in such hexes. The idea being they don't have enough mobility, to be able to evade the bombardments. No overruns into or out of such hexes. Units in a minefield cannot conduct recons. And there's no specific loss effect to units being in the minefield, but it's bad to be in one if you're in any combat situation. An uncompleted minefield is the same, except it's -1 to the action rating of units, +2 movement point to leg, +5 for track truck. And if a player abandons an uncompleted minefield, the other player can either finish it or pull it up for reuse as desired. Okay. Removing minefields. To remove a minefield, you follow the same exact process for installation, except that when you're done, you have a removed minefield to reuse. The 1 SP is gone forever. Now, this is interesting. It says, follow the exact process. It sounds like it would cost 1 ASP per hex. I don't think that's the case. I think the SP is the actual mines you're providing. The removing unit must be in the minefield's hex. Uncompleted minefields can be removed, but the process is done from that point. 1 turn to undo. The uncompleted minefield cost is the one that cannot be used. Because it would be weird, because you wouldn't have to spend the SP for an uncompleted minefield, but you'd have to spend it for a completed. I just think this is poorly worded. Unfortunately for me, I can't find my, I have a little envelope that's filled with all the goodies that the gamers used to send out, and I can't find mine anymore. I gave it a look before this. I don't know what I've done with it. I know I have it here, obviously, but I actually remember accessing it for something. One of these other old gamers games, and I know that there are counters for DAK in it, and I don't think that I've already processed them. More than that, there might be, some corrections to the old DAK rules. Yeah, I could probably find corrections online. But, reusing. Removed minefields can be reinstalled by the player who removed them by following the procedure for initial installation. There is no SP cost when installing a pre-owned minefield. I think the key here is the 1 SP is the cost of the mines the first time, and only that. And that's how I'm going to do it. There's no time delay between when a minefield is removed and when it can be reused. Scorpions. The Commonwealth gets 2 Scorpion companies towards the end of the game. These can be identified by an S inside their armor symbol. He can use these to reduce the effects of minefields he must cross. If a Scorpion is in a minefield, you reduce the action rating effects by 1. You have the additional movement point cost, and all the other effects remain the same. It's not going to do a hell of a lot, but whatever. City captures. I've already talked about this vaguely, which is that some of these cities have a star on them that gives a reward. So for example, here, if either side captures Mersa Matrua, they get an SP and a 1 token. I always read that as 1 talent. Just used to ancient games in North Africa, that's all. 1 token, a truck point. So the key though is your enemy has to have held the space for 2 or more months in order for you to get that reward. At the beginning of the scenario, all these locations have been held for 2 months. And then it lists them all here. The most exciting ones are where the Brits actually get some Italian armor the first time they capture it. Aircraft. We're going to try to be as simple as we can. Airstrips are minor airfields. They cannot be built. An airstrip can be upgraded into a regular level 1 for 1 token without a die roll. In airstrip hexes,
Level 1 air bases can be reduced to airstrip status. Airstrips themselves can never be reduced or destroyed. Airstrips are worth the same as a level 1 airbase, except they don't protect any air units. They generate no flak, and they can only refit 1 air unit per turn. Air entry points are these suckers. In general, I'm going to be very, very brief with these. You're allowed to leave the map with, I've already said this, with your air unit. You look on here to see the distance between them. You count that many extra hexes against your movement, and you come in at another AEP and are able to do stuff. There's some complicated rules for interpolating where you end up if you're, entering between 2 AEP markers. They're not that complicated. I think you pay the worst cost. Air units can transfer from one base to another outside their printed range. I think this is all standard rules now, honestly. Weather. Weather is very simple. Every turn, you roll on the weather chart based on the month, 11 to 66 die roll, and you get a result. If it's clear, all maps are clear. If it's sandstorm or rainstorm, some maps will be impacted. Now in a sandstorm, let's see where it is. You roll 1 die to see how many maps are affected and randomly determine which ones have been hit by sandstorms. Rainstorms, you'll randomly determine 2 maps that are under rain. Okay, for sandstorms, green units and replacements aren't allowed to move under their own power, but they can use rail or sea movement. No barrage or combat is allowed into or out of sandstorms. If a random event cannot be conducted due to the weather, the event will be delayed until the weather allows it. That's going to be a pain in the ass to cope with, but whatever. All air units on the affected maps become inactive on their affected map, and they're stranded on their airbase or airstrip. If they were on station, they become inactive at any airbase or airstrip of that map or any holding box in range. Rainstorms. Wadis become impassable unless there's a primary road crossing, and attacks are only allowed at those points. And there doesn't seem to be much impact to the combat across like what's essentially a limited bridge. All air units on the affected maps become inactive at the friendly airbase. No air unit on the map can refit until the rainstorm is over. Terrain costs for movement are doubled. Other than the above, attacks and barrages are handled normally. Whew. Like I said, I don't think I'm finishing this today, so I'm going to take another break. Plotting through, this is just lots of little, very chromy type rules, but they're the stuff that's necessary to bring the campaign alive. I'll probably fuck half of it up, who knows. Okay, let's eke out a little bit more. Shipping is, shipping is how you get your stuff from outside the theater in, but there's also coastal shipping that allows you to move from one port to another. The Commonwealth is going to be limited only by the port capacities of his Nile Delta ports. Allied withdrawals do not count against port capacity. Access units in SP, though, count against both port capacity and their shipping allowance in general. Shipping of units which do not have a move mode side is done in combat mode. Single unit counters larger than a port's port capacity are allowed to be shipped in, expending the entire shipping allowance. I think this has all made its way into the standard rules for 4.3, but it's new. I haven't had to deal with shipping, so, I think I read through the rules in Reluctant Enemies, but I haven't had to deal with them. So let's see. Shipping of units which, yeah. Single unit counters that are larger than the port capacity can be used at the expenditure of the entire shipping allowance or port capacity involved. Unused shipping allowance or that in excess of the player's current port capacity is lost, can't be saved. Ports have their port damage tracks, which have a different port capacity as the port takes hits. And no, we will not be playing Wild Blue Yonder to determine the efficacy of barrages against facilities or units or anything. It would be an interesting thing if I could come up with, like, you know, because we've got the right planes, sometimes in the wrong numbers though. Okay. Coastal shipping. Both sides have a limited amount of coastal shipping available each turn. The Axis coastal shipping allowance is given according to the turn month on the Axis logistics charts and values table, which is over here. And I'm not going to walk. I'm going to zoom and see if we can see it. Yeah, we can't read it through the camera. It's probably better for you than it is for me if I could do that. But yeah, so we look up a month and date, and now things start in September, so, you know, and we see we've got two numbers there. Bold number indicates cross-med shipping allowance per turn. Normal type number followed by AC is the coastal shipping allowance for the turn. Okay, so the cross-med is what I'm going to be using to get, you know, from Europe, whereas the coastal shipping is what I'm going to be using on the map. Okay. The Allied value is given on the Allied tables on map D, which are actually on map C. All right. Well, that's the rail cap. Keep looking. We got variable reinforcements. That's different. I'm not seeing the shipping listed on D. Are they lying? The Allied value is given on the Allied tables on map D. Okay, let's look. We got the Sphinx desecration table, which is a joke. Allied variable reinforcements, that is not it. Allied logistical charts, I would think, would have it, but it just has the two rail caps. I'm a little unhappy here. I am a little unhappy. We got this. We got a lot of space that it could be, you know. So it feels like if it's there, it should be. But I'm not seeing it, and it would be really stupid to put it over here. And there's also no clear place for it. So we've got the Axis logistical. Oh, they got their rail cap here. Oh look, they have almost none. Maybe it's. Here we go, coastal shipping. Tiny little single line. They've got one SP of coastal shipping throughout. So actually the Axis, and it kind of makes sense, in the Med may have more coastal shipping than the Allies do. Now, they have a fucking fleet based at Alexandria, which isn't represented in the game, but I find it kind of I don't know. Oh, where are we? Coastal shipping is the only way to ship SPs and units to ports other than Tripoli or the Nile Delta ports. Shipping can be used. Now, this is a little weird because actually there was some access shipping to other ports, but the overall cost of how it was actually used was probably higher than had it shipped into Tripoli in terms of losses and whatnot. Had it shipped into Tripoli and ridden, and then taken the roads. So they've kind of done a little bit of sleight of hand there to try to, maybe bring some units in a little early that can go to Tripoli a little earlier, just to speed them up. Just to make the game a little simpler. Benghazi and coastal shipping. For several reasons, Benghazi was the most favored destination for the Axis coastal shipping, shorter distance from Tripoli. Coastal shipping costs are 1/2 for shipping going from Tripoli to Benghazi and vice versa around normally. So the maximum port capacity is 1 plus 2T, or so that would be 4T plus 2T, so 6T. To ship the maximum Benghazi from Tripoli could cost the Allied player 3T of his coastal shipping allowance. So it doesn't actually affect the port shipping points, which are correct for Benghazi. What it does is it affects the coastal shipping cost between them, which is actually what it kind of says. Coastal shipping costs. Commonwealth reinforcements must enter a Nile Delta port first, any port on map E or Alexandria. We have Suez there, Port Said. Are there any other ports? Oh, yeah, I guess. I guess. I'm just wondering if there's anything else kind of trickling around down here. Ismailia maybe, whatever. Suez, obviously. Yeah, okay. The Axis must ship to Tripoli first. Once they arrive at the required first stop, they can then move via coastal shipping by land or rail to locations the player desires, but they cannot do this until the next game turn. Air reinforcements arrive normally at any airbase or airstrip, and they're inactive at this point. And then we've got this talking about there was apparently direct shipping from Italy to Benghazi, what I was trying to discuss there. And again, let's make things simpler. All right. Supplies. The OCS is a game about supplies in a lot of ways. A lot of your effort is going to be trying to figure out, as you're trying to figure out your movement, do I have enough supplies to move to activate these units and fuel them up so that they can move by their road movement allowance or whatever, so that they can move by anything other than just foot schloggers, which suck. And then on top of that, you have to figure out, do I have enough resources to be able to fire, to be able to fight the combat, and then what do I have left over for barrage, right? And in most OCS games, what I found was you could kind of play by ear as long as you don't use too much artillery. This one is going to have, even Burma, so the only ones I've played, okay, so I haven't played a lot of the big ones. But basically my intention was always shift a bunch of supplies where I need them, and don't try to cut it too fine. You're going to need more supplies than you calculate, so just ship what you can to the front as quickly and as powerfully as you can. The desert was particularly restrictive on supplies, though. Now, you would think Burma would be too. there were ways. Elephants through the hills and whatnot. Okay. Any friendly port can be used as a trace supply source, providing no enemy unit is adjacent to it. Damage to a port does not matter for trace supply. Neither player can use a port. So there's two kinds of supply in the OCS. Well, there's many kinds of supply. But there's basically on-map supply that you use for most things. Fueling your units to move them, combat costs, and artillery fire, barrages, whatnot. But then there's trace supply, which causes, if you fail to achieve supply during the trace supply phase, the supply phase actually, you take an attrition result, which is not something you want to have happen. Okay. Where are we here? Neither player can use a port on the other side of Tobruk as a supply source if the enemy holds Tobruk. No access trace is allowed to any port east of Solemn before Crete falls. I don't know where Solemn is. You would think it's, here. I was going to say you would think it's near the Crete box, but, well, the Crete box, it is, kind of. I can't picture well enough. Oh, where are we? This restriction does not apply to the use of the port for coastal shipping, only to the port's use as a trace source. No Axis may trace to Suez, even if it's owned by the Axis. On or after March 41, Hex 1935 becomes an Axis trace source. That's where Rommel comes in, essentially. Roads for trace purposes. Primary roads and roads can be used for trace supply, exactly like the normal use of railroads in the series rules. This is something very weird. And Dean goes into quite a bit of explanation of why it's allowed here. Basically, you would have to provide huge amounts of trucks in the game to be used as extenders. And you actually don't have any extenders in use. And also, they just wouldn't serve much. So instead of, like, they might allow you to do things that weren't historically followed, particularly in terms of being able to create supply paths through the desert and whatnot. That's the choice that I don't remember about Africa, but that the Desert Fox uses. Is it gives you, a bunch of trucks, and you actually create this whole network of supply in it. And it's very clever, and it's very clearly designed to work in the North Africa campaign, and unlike the OCS, which is really kind of designed more for the East Front, and needed this to make better sense, to work better. You'd need a lot of extenders in this. Anyway. Like the railways, this trace is blocked if an enemy attack-capable unit is adjacent to the road, but unlike them, this effect is negated by presence of friendly units. There's no damaged or interdiction effects to this trace, and no need for deroadable. Remember, those detrainable hexes, those are what you actually trace to in OCS generally. Any road hex will do as a connection point. A connection between a road trace and a later railroad must be a detrainable hex. However, rail cap cannot be used on roads. Italians can only trace using primary roads or railroads until March 41, when they begin to use regular roads like everyone else. Again, once Rommel comes in, the Italians start operating like everyone else. Units which must trace together must do so here as well. German and Italian multi-unit divisions must trace together, unless they're within a comp group. Allied units have no such requirement, and elements of multi-unit divisions can be scattered all over the map without ill effect. Oasis hexes, now I don't remember if that's still the case. They say 11.6H. You know what? I'm going to take a little bit of a break and check this. It's not going to be the right number. So it's actually 12.6F. All combat units in a multi-unit formation should make their trace to the same headquarters or same direct draw source. If this is not possible, you select part of the formation to trace for free, and the rest have to eat off the map or be out of supply. The reason for this is to keep formations together so that you don't, have them, like they said, scattered all over the map. Why are the British not, or why is the Commonwealth not affected by this? Because they had a tendency to take units and shuffle them all over the fucking place during this campaign. So they didn't want to put that restriction on them in terms of this. There was a lot of shuffling of command responsibilities and whatnot. Oasis hexes. They provide a trace supply source for up to 3 regimental equivalents. Units of either side can trace to an unoccupied oasis even if on the same turn, as there is no control restrictions on the use of an oasis provided they're unoccupied. At Girabub, which is I think the one, no, this is Girabub. The Girabub Sanusi do not count against the 3 REs. They are free. Now I do not have them, that's the Siwa Camel. I don't know where the Girabub Sanusi are, but they're a unit. British supply centers. Alexandria, Port Said, and Suez are infinite nominal dumps. Here's the deal with them. They are not allowed to have any supply points in them. If you're going to move out of there, you can pick up supply points from the nominal dump and move them away. You can fill up something like this and leave that lying around. You can use it, you can load trucks, whatnot. Basically, I have an infinite amount of supply in these locations, but it's only an infinite amount on turns when the Suez connection exists. If the Suez connection dies, that infinite amount drops to 0 immediately. I think I'm then allowed to stockpile supplies there if I wish. But that's basically what this is all about. Trucks. And then I think we stopped there because got a few weird things, but I've got to do raid very shortly. Okay, there are organic trucks in this game are printed with a full marker on them. You can flip them over to expend the supply from them. You could drop the supply off from them, not from organic, sorry. Organic trucks are organic to a particular formation. So, not sure. I think I got one here. No. Maybe up here. Yeah, there's one. It is attached to that formation. It is not, the big limitation on it is, I'm not allowed to pick up, to use that to transport supplies back and forth to the front. Basically, I can't take the supplies that are in that truck and put them on the ground. The only thing the organic truck can use its supply for is supplying units for fueling, for combat, etc. I can't leave it on the map for some other unit to use. And that's a big limitation. In fact, one of the options is to make all the organic Axis trucks, I think all of them, into just standard trucks and allow them, this tremendous flexibility with being able to move their stuff. And basically Dean's comment is, that's how you get to Suez. Is like, if you take that simple limitation, simple limitation on your ability to transport supplies generally, as opposed to just carrying them around for specific units, those few extra trucks would be enough. I don't buy it, but like, it would be a huge advantage to just ignore what those trucks can do. And that is something that I allowed myself to do in the Compass scenario, was I was like, oh, I got trucks, I'll just haul stuff back and forth. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. Okay. Now here it says, organic trucks can never be break down into token-sized trucks. Wasn't this a token-sized truck? No, that's a full point. Ooh, I didn't realize that. I thought they were tokens. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of truck. Ooh. My mail is here, and it's a pain in the ass for me to get mail. It looks like I'm not getting any. Like having to climb over that tree is... she's still thinking. Wait, nope, nothing for me. Yeah, I think they prep for the next mailbox at the past one always. Okay, token truck breakdowns. Okay, so there's multiple different counters for trucks, and we have like 1 token trucks, which have the full size on them. We have 2 and 3 token trucks here, and then we have full SP trucks. Most of the trucks are small. I think counter mix matters. And I think that's about it. All right, that is probably it for today. Okay, here it is, Saturday. My neighbor actually did a nice thing he was saying he was going to do. He cut up my tree for me. I don't know if he took any of the wood I offered him, but well, we'll see. It looks like there's a lot of it there, is what I'm thinking. More than I expected. I figured he'd take about half of it, or more, because I don't need all that much, but I'll be able to use it. Okay, I got a listing of all the different nationalities here. For the most part, things are able to cooperate. There are some exceptions, but U.S. Air Force and RAF units of the same type can be interchanged to make full-strength air units, which is kind of cool. Germans and Italians have to be replacements are kept separate by color. This is important because German units are just such higher quality. So the game uses generic replacement counters for everyone, which was something that always confused me about OCS. And I don't know why. It's like, you know, trucks are different colors and whatnot, but for the most part, your replacements are going to be in your back areas, so it kind of allows a greater countermix capability or something. I don't know. A greater flexibility within the countermix. But they came up with specific German ones, which are only able to, are the only things able to replace German equipment and troop points.
I don't know if they're allowed to do it for Italians. I doubt it, but you wouldn't want to. That actually brings an interesting and annoying facet to this. The color of the German units, other than the Luftwaffe, is relatively close to the color of some of the Commonwealth units. Yeah, the Commonwealth are a little darker. I find them too close to one another for my comfort. And I don't know what I would prefer out of everything. I'm kind of used to Germans being gray, and that would make sense. But yeah, I just don't know. I really don't understand that. In fact, I kind of want to go check, since I have Third Winter open, to see, because this is actually a color I would use for Soviets. You know, why? No great reason, except that, you know, like uniform color and whatnot, it doesn't really apply. Except that it's sort of become common through a lot of old World War II games, and it's persisted as kind of a habit that that kind of brown, that some sort of brownish color is used for Soviet units. I'm gonna go check. Third Winter, exactly what I would expect. Gray Germans, brownish colored Russians, just like every, you know, almost every other game out there. Sometimes I'll see the Russians in red. So I thought, maybe this was a decision that was undertaken due to feedback coming back. So I opened up my oldest OCS game, the original Guderian's Blitzkrieg, that I picked up used. And it too, Germans in a gray, Soviets in kind of, you know, a tan-ish type color. And I can't understand why the decision was made here to put the Germans in a brown that is very close to one of their opponents. And then I started to think, maybe the decision was based on uniform color, indeed, which would make sense because, hey, their desert uniforms would be brown as well, as the British. Well, it sort of doesn't work. The Italians were not running around in this color uniform. The French were not wearing blue anymore. So I really don't know, but I think it was a really awful decision, just to be honest. I gotta swap batteries. I spent a lot of time chatting and got almost nowhere. Let's keep going. Weird color combinations. In order to make full use of the combinations available, when using option 1A, a number of units will have what look like weird color combinations. So our Royal Artillery units have a red mech symbol. This means correctly they're able to negate light armor from being doubled in the open. What is option 1A? They say 6.1A? No, they just say option 1A. How odd. The Egyptian National Army. This is not having to do with this. So maybe some option within the 2.1i or whatever. I'm going to look it up. Where artillery is getting some kind of anti-tank effect out of it, and I, don't know if that persists, but it is not the case that. So if you look, there's a lot that don't have that capability. So I don't know. It can't be a general rule. And now I'm like,
All right. Let's take a look at the series rules and see if there's an option 1A in here. Just always curious what the fuck is going on. I think, I don't see any options. Oh, here we go. Option 1A. Armor and mech units are usually ×2 in open terrain according to special modifiers. In the following, they're ×1. I get the feeling this is all covered in the core rules at this point, and refined from those original. So optional rules in the series are kind of weird. They're like not really options so much as, I mean, they're optional, but you know, they're not options in the sense of like, oh, for more complexity, you can do this. Although often they might work out that way to get more historical realism or whatever. But the way they actually are used is more like, we're thinking about putting these into the next version of the series rules, and we want feedback on them. So if you play these, please let us know. You know, how did they work? Do you have issues with them? So it's kind of like an extended play test of, you know, rules that they've picked up, you know, that either Dean and company have like come up with on their own, or sometimes things that somebody else has suggested to them that they figured out a way to implement properly. Anyway, where the hell am I? Boy, I'm taking a long time. So this is not what I thought it would be, which has to do with the Italian captured tanks, which really do look weird. It's just that, hey, some of the artillery actually has anti-tank capabilities built into them. Okay. Two-step brigades. All brigade-sized units in this game have 2 steps. Even though they have 2 steps, they're 1 RE when at full strength, half after losing a step. Their combat and barrage strengths are halved after losing a step, and I guess you just use a step marker on them. This is going to be annoying, I can just tell you, because one gets used to, and I certainly am still remembering this, that the big divisional units have a little number on them. The brigades do not, do they? I don't know. See if I can find a brigade. I don't have, yeah, so here's a brigade. It does not have a little step number on it. That's somewhat disturbing. So like, it's something I'm gonna have to remember, and I didn't remember it at all when I started playing Compass, and just fucking, you know, one-step units, you know, it's what I'm used to. So this is a weird little thing. Each step has a flak value, so a full strength brigade has a flak strength of 2. Something else I didn't notice, which is that flak is not, I was not defined. Oh, there's my mail. I kind of want to watch and see if they get anything, so I'm gonna, yeah, I got some. Okay. I was gonna turn the camera off so I don't waste more of your time, but, you know. Okay. Anyway, this is something that I fucked up as well in playing, or in plain compass. Battery and company-sized units. These small units are handled exactly as battalions, except for their rebuild costs are half, except for their rebuild costs. So they have, I don't know, the rebuilds are going to be baked into a chart, so that's not a problem. All headquarters engineer, pioneer, and assault engineer have engineering capabilities as per normal series rules. However, no Axis unit has bridging capabilities. Egyptian railroad battalions and the New Zealand railroad companies are the only units in the game capable of repairing rail lines. The only capability the Egyptian port engineer has is to repair port damage. Attack capable units, there's a few units with printed combat strength of a half, which are going to be considered attack capable. AA versus AT. For historical purposes, some of the units are marked as anti-aircraft rather than anti-tank, like the 88s. In the game, there's no difference. The units have the same ability as anti-tank units, especially those applying the optional combined are no longer optional. It's funny how old this game is. You know, I'm thinking this is like 2.1i in the rule set. I don't know if there were enough games printed, like, before DAK came out, to justify the letter I. There may have been like versions of the rules that were released to playtesters and whatnot that were lettered, because I kind of don't feel like there weren't that many in the series at the time this came out. Okay, removing or disbanding units. Some units are called on to be removed by the orders of arrival. They're removed directly from play, from whatever situation they're in, and placed back in the counter tray. Other units can be disbanded to allow another unit to be built. And we talked about this, some of these guys up here are composed of multiple units on the board, or replace units on the board, either one. And if you disband or lose them, those other units, you're going to be able to build those. But while their original units are on the map, which may not be the same designation, you cannot build those. Rebuilding units, non-rebuildable units. Some units can't be rebuilt at all. Once destroyed, they permanently leave the game. They have a yellow circle with a red border around their action rating. Step losses in these units cannot be replaced either. 50% rebuild cost units. One replacement can build 2 of these. If only one needs to be rebuilt, roll a die. On a 4 through 6, the unit's rebuilt for free. On a 1 through 3, the unit rebuilds, but the replacement must be expended. You must have the replacement present in order to do this. Tobruk defenses, there's special rebuild rules for Tobruk defenses. Great. Replacing and exchanging units. Numerous unit exchanges happen in the game. These can be for organization, equipment, whatever. They're all handled the same way. You pull the old unit from wherever its situation is and replace it with a new one. If the unit is in the dead pile, the replacement goes into the dead pile. If the unit's out of supply, exhausted internals, and in strat move mode, what a combination, the new one acquires just those same traits. Apply this exactly regardless of precise circumstances of the unit. The replacement assumes whatever traits the old unit had. Air unit upgrades, however, enter alive and at full strength, even if inactive. Even if the air unit being upgraded is in the dead pile or reduced. The idea here is there were plenty of pilots, maybe not great ones, but there were plenty of pilots available. It was really the machinery that was the issue. I've got to stop. Yeah, like I said, it's Saturday. I went dancing, and
I'm never at my top, but Saturdays I'm pretty wiped out. Okay, it's nighttime, but I got myself a martini, and I'm hoping somehow that makes it easier to go through this. I don't know. One can always dream. Okay, so in this game, and I haven't seen this before in OCS, I don't know if they followed up anywhere else with it, they've added a couple of new things, leaders and conf groups. And they work somewhat similarly. First of all, they're allowed to do reactive rolls. They're gonna have a number, and if they can roll equal to or higher than that number, they're able to operate somewhat like a reserve unit. They're unaffected by supply concerns. The actual counters are unaffected. The units that are contained in, or with a leader or conf group marker are still affected and have to deal with supplies normally. They don't need fuel of their own. They don't suffer attrition. They have no step or RE. They can't take losses. If they're the top unit, like any other marker, they can be peaked under. They can be lost. They can never be rebuilt. They don't have any shipping or port capacity costs, so they can travel for free. They don't use up rail cap. You are able to air transport them, but that does require you to use a plane. They don't take up any space on the plane, but at the beginning of a phase requiring reserve for activation, you can make a reaction roll and see if you can function in that phase, even if you're adjacent to an enemy and or not in reserve mode. That gives the stack full capabilities as if they had been marked as reserves. If the roll isn't successful, nothing happens. The roll won't affect regular trucks, inorganic ones, and anything else incapable of being placed into reserve. To make a reaction roll, you roll the die, and if you succeed, you get to act. And you're allowed to ignore an exploitation result in order to try for the full movement potential of a reaction roll, but then you don't get the exploit marker, so there you go. All right, leaders themselves can also help a stack's action rating. If you choose to use the leader's action rating effect, that stack gets a +1 modification. Each time this modifier is used, though, you have to make a leader loss check, and that's got its own little effect here. Leader loss checks also happen when the enemy enters your leader hex and the leader's alone. And yeah, and Rommel has a little bit of a bonus on there so that you can use him as he was historically used without getting him killed right away. It can still happen. He could also be captured. Now, captured leaders are put in the captured leaders box on the map. I don't know where the fuck that is. I don't even feel like looking for it particularly. I really don't want to get up. I'm not seeing it over here. And then we gotta walk past the lights over here. I don't even remember one. We got dead and removed. I don't see one. I'm a little tired. I'm a lot tired. There we go. There it is. Up there. Great. Okay. Ow, fuck. These tables, you know, I get so used to having, if I'm at a big table or whatever, having leg room, but all these legs of the tables, I end up banging into them fairly regularly, to be honest. You probably don't see it too often because usually when I sit down, like when I was playing the Central Front or whatever, if I sat down, that was usually off camera. I'm just like looking for something in the rolls and needed to rest. Okay. Anyway, the only way you get leaders back is by cutting deals of some sort. I can't imagine that, like, I don't know what else you'd be able to trade a leader for. Maybe, maybe you could be like, I'll take if you don't attack for this turn, I'll give you the leader back or something like that. I can't imagine that being very likely. And in addition, actually even exchanging leaders feels a little iffy. It's probably to one player's advantage or the other. You don't have to do it equally. So maybe if somebody has like 3 leaders captured and the other person has 2, and leaders, the person who has has lost 2 leaders might be on more of an offensive type position where they might need them more. I'm not sure though. I'm not sure that they're actually offensively advantageous more than defensively. I mean, reaction markers are useful. Reserve markers are useful in both cases. So, okay. How about Rommel? He gets +1 on the leader loss table. When he's lost from play, he's replaced by a DAK leader counter, which will be one of his replacement leaders. Now, if this leader disappears if Rommel returns, if the DAK leader is killed, captured, or otherwise removed from play, he will not get a replacement. So then when Rommel goes away, whatever the status of the DAK leader counter is in effect. Rommel also has a lot of random events applying to him. KGs are used like regular divisional markers and can be used to represent units that have been removed from the map in the same way. I don't know how you do this. So with divisions, it's pretty fucking easy. So like I have the 4th Indian Division on the map here. I've actually got them up here to indicate, what's in that stack to keep it kind of local. Nothing suggests you do that. Something in my head says it would be really nice to have like, a sheet with all of the divisions and you'd put them there. There's on the other side of these, there's the fueled side in case you fuel the entire formation, which can be useful even if you're not using it as an off-board marker, which is why I have these guys up here. But at the very least, you can put a unit of that division at the top of the stack that's off-board, or the closest that you want to come to that, and piece of something on the ground, and that can give you an indication of which counter it is at least. But with the conf groups, you don't have that, and there are no holding boxes or anything like that you put these in. Not that I know of. I think I've looked through the different tables and whatnot. Obviously, you can make some. You could use index cards or something like that to handle them. I don't know. Whatever works, but anyway. Anyway, they move along by riding with units they happen to stack with. They're destroyed the instant they run out of units and no longer have any unit to stack with of the appropriate type. The only way they can be destroyed. They can never exist in a hex without at least one other unit. They retreat with the units in their hex and are not destroyed if the retreat kills the units. If at the end of a retreat, a comp group is not stacked properly, it's destroyed. They're not limited by nationality. Italian rags can have Germans in them, and German KGs can have Italians. However, there are some limitations. So where they say they're not limited, they're lying. A KG must have at least one unit
in it of the same nationality as the KG at all times, or it's destroyed. And the action rating chosen from a hex containing a KG must always be from the same nationality as the KG, which makes the Italian ones pretty iffy as you go on, because the Italian troops are not high quality. At this point in the game, though, they're all that's on the board, and this is when you get most of them. So you can freely assign units into and out of a KG by moving them in their hex. Only those in the same hex are part of the KG at any time. Units in the KG are considered part of a single drawing group for trace supplies, which means that they don't cause an issue if they're part of a parent division. Like, they've become sort of their own command and allow you some more flexibility. Organic trucks can be attached to a KG as desired. However, they retain their original divisional assignment, which means they can still only supply units of that division, but they could be part of the KG. Units in the KG hex at the instant the hex's fuel costs are paid, and which remain in the KG until the next friendly cleanup phase, retain their fueled status, just as if they were a multi-unit division. So this is the thing. In all ways, they work kind of, or in a lot of ways, they work kind of like a divisional marker. The one thing they don't really work with is pulling them off the map is not as easy, is I guess what I was trying to say before. Units under such special status can be marked as being the only ones under the KG marker in the hex, or being held off map in the KG. This applies to all units remaining in the KG during that period. I probably will not ever pull units off the map for the KG, no matter how convenient that might be. Simply, like, I'm even iffy about doing it with the divisions. It serves an additional purpose in actual opposed play, though, because it does somewhat hide how big the stack is. Oh, okay. God, I'm tired. I want to pause. I'm just too fucking tired to do this. You know, the lighting is working out just fine, but every time I try to do something, it's Saturday, and you know, my body just aches everywhere. Everything's just like, geez, I don't know. I just want to sleep, honestly, but I tried that and that didn't work. It is Sunday. Beautiful looking day. Yesterday was warm, but very, very wet, very rainy. Hitting around 60 degrees. Today it's supposed to get up to 70. I got to get down to the park because the last year we had this kind of situation, the last time we had this kind of situation, which was also the year of the power outage and everything else, all the crazy stuff happening around here. Same kind of things were happening, flooding and everything. When I got to the park, it was underwater, like down near the river. The whole river had overflown its banks. It was really, really impressive. All right, let's see if, oh, by the way, my neighbor, I think he hauled all the wood out of that side of things, which is kind of cool because I was feeling kind of guilty if he was going to leave me most of that wood. He gave me some earlier. It took more than I thought he would, but he may have just loaded it up on that cart and pushed it back or something, and now is cutting it up. So I may end up getting some of it. I don't know. But the amount that he was leaving down there, I was like, wow, I've got to get him something if he's doing that. So I was going to get him a bottle of whiskey or something, a decent brand. But now I don't feel anywhere near as much compulsion, which is probably for the best. Okay, so where are we? Yeah, okay. Random events. Look, there's a random events table. It's divided into different categories of rarity, and you just roll at the beginning of each turn to see if something, to see what, if anything, happens. Some of them are like one-timers or whatever. Most of the time, when an event doesn't trigger for some reason or another, it's just a no-event situation. The Greek campaign. Okay, so this is weird. There are two ways to play this game. One is purely historical, and one is utilizing the Greek campaign status and deployment progress. I think I'm going to do the random because, well, it's more complicated, so let's make life harder. The Greek campaign will happen in the spring of 41. What's in doubt is the exact timing of its beginning and end. The Greek campaign status track records the progress of the Greek campaign. Roll 2 dice as called for in the Commonwealth order of arrival at the beginning of each turn where a roll is listed, and you advance the marker if the roll is greater than or equal to the value given. Do not advance the marker again until the first successful roll after the roll. After the roll is automatic. I think that's just a sort of a common sense thing. I'm not sure. The Greek deployment progress track is used to follow the deployment schedule. Commonwealth troops, Greece. Place a marker on the track when the Greek campaign prep period, which is going to be this stage, I guess the first move, begins. Advance the marker 1 box per turn until the Greek campaign execution begins. As the marker advances, required troops must be withdrawn. And they will be listed at various times. I'm going to have trouble reading those. Probably need to break out my decent glasses. May even have to use my special reading glasses. So you can hear I've got tea going. That kind of puts a rush on me. You have 4 turns to get them to a port and move them to Greece. This is going to be mechanically obnoxious, hunting down specific pieces. You can recall, the withdrawals and reinforcements and whatnot, like from Desert Fox. It's going to be as obnoxious as that. Luckily, this is a bigger game, so there's, more other things in between that obnoxiousness. I guess. I don't know. I like Desert Fox a lot. I think it's one of Berg's best games and one of the best World War II games out there. When Greek campaign execution begins, execute that turn's withdrawals and remove the marker from the Greek deployment progress track. So campaign execution will be here. I guess you stop deploying troops to Greece at this point. No additional withdrawals are made to Greece. Any units dragging their heels on the way off to the map, though, must still exit 4 turns after being called, within 4 turns. If further withdrawals remain on the deployment progress track, they never occur. And this actually did happen. Okay, I got to pour some tea. When the marker reaches the termination box, again, due to random event rolls, die roll checks, roll for each counter sent to Greece separately on the Greek return table and execute the result. And we have a Greek return table here. You might get, the unit might not come back. Any units dragging their heels at this point no longer need to withdraw. This includes any units sent via regular variable withdrawals before the Greek campaign prep period. I don't know what regular variable withdrawals are, but we shall see. Right? Because the prep period is when you start getting these withdrawals. I don't know. From the turn the marker enters the termination box, the access player owns and can use the Crete box. Malta. So Malta was a royal pain in the ass to access shipping. And plans were drawn up to attack the island. Desert Fox, I don't remember. Again, I haven't played Africa many times, like
once, maybe twice. Like, I vaguely think that I may have played it with my buddy. Same buddy who liked Down in Flames, by the way. That was just like from a certain slice of time for me. But I know Desert Fox has an optional rule for attacking Malta. Here, the Malta invasion green light may come via a random event. Should the event occur, the Axis player must immediately decide to either execute the invasion or pass. So you don't have control in this game. You may get it. You may get the option. Should he decline the invasion, he cannot later change his mind and do it. The event itself can only happen once. If a player chooses to perform the invasion, the Flieger Corps, if active, becomes inactive. The Flieger Corps is planes based, I believe, in Sicily that are going to be supporting your supplies, making it over to Tripoli. But they could also be repositioned, if I recall correctly. You can use them for other things. The special rules are elsewhere. Remove all Junker 52 air units, Kampfgruppe Busse, all L-22 or 22 LL divisions, all Ramke brigade units, and the Folgore Airborne Division from play. If any haven't arrived, they never will. None of these units will return. Malta would have been a bloodbath to take. But the assumption here is you succeed. At the end of 9 months, the Malta invasion is successful, and the Malta table base modifier is permanently +3. During the 9 turns of the invasion, the base modifier is -1. Once Malta is captured, cross-med shipping can go to either Tripoli or Benghazi. And the effect of Malta, I think that starts at 0, I don't know. Active Fleeting Corps. Is the Malta table, which is going to be losses to the shipping in terms of SPs that the Axis gets. Now, where do they get that shipping from? Well, that's a good question. I don't think it's in here. It may be in this book. It's the regular variable withdrawal. This is all the reinforcements and whatnot. I don't think this is where supply points are spelled out. I'm not quite sure, like normally there's a table that you roll for your supply points, if I recall correctly. This is just Pax and Equa. Like this is the thing, this is something I don't recall reading anything about. And when I'm rereading the rules here, I'm like, where is the supply value? We know with the Allies, their supply is dependent on Suez, right? You lose Suez, you're fucked, basically. If you can get it back quickly, fine, you'll be okay. But Axis supply obviously is some numerical amount that's supposed to reach Tripoli. And I'm at a loss as to where that is. I'll flip through it a little bit and see. Because again, I don't remember any rules, any chart, anything that tells me how much supply I get each turn. Okay, here's what I think it is. I think the Axis has unlimited supplies in Europe. And the limitation, this isn't spelled out nicely, like it didn't sink into me until I started studying all these different tables here. There's a lot of these little text boxes on this map, which is painful. It really is, the amount of different little play aids and reminders and whatnot. It's just overwhelming, but it's a big game, man. So I think what happens is you have a bold amount of cross-Mediterranean shipping, and you might have units available that you can shift from Europe across to North Africa. And that will compete with the amount of supply points you want to haul. Now, we'll get to that in a little bit. All right, let's do the final one, Desert Raiders. This is any commando type unit smaller than a regiment. Notably, the Sonderverband commandos are not Desert Raiders, and this doesn't apply. They can't use their action rating as attacker or defender unless they're alone on their side in the combat. Except if you got two raiders together. A Desert Raider can be out of trace supply for 6 turns without becoming out of supply or checking for attrition. How do you track that? God, I don't know. Desert Raiders have a leg movement allowance on both sides of their counter, so they never require fuel. The unit can use either leg or truck movement point costs, whichever is better for each hex entered. And the idea there has to do largely with like horse or camel usage, I believe. All right. Nation-specific rules. All right, we'll start. There isn't that much more total. Hip shoots. German air units can do hip shoots at any time. The Italians can never. There's reserve markers by nationality for the Germans and Italians. Now this is really weird. The Axis player has 2 sets, one German, one Italian. He can exchange these markers however he likes to keep the color of any reserve marker consistent with the units. Okay? Sure? Can? What? To keep the enemy guessing is parenthetical, provided he ensures that the total in play at any one time is limited to the number currently available. I have no idea what this is meant to say. It would feel to me that, like, I just don't know. I got no idea what they're trying to say there. Is there any reason that they're different colors? It sounds to me like they're completely flexible and screw it, you can use whatever you like. Nominal headquarters, Sicily's old box in Tripoli, Sicily's old box, Tripoli and Crete can be considered to have nominal headquarters in them so that you're allowed to rebuild units in them. Here we go, reinforcements and shipping. Axis shipping allowance is provided on the Axis logistical tables. The actual shipping allowances the player can use is determined by taking that raw allowance and subtracting losses from the Malta table. This is done each turn before starting Axis movement. Determine the current Malta table modifier using the list shown and mark it using the track. Roll 2 dice on the Malta table and add the current modifier. This will determine any losses to shipping. The remaining shipping can be used to either ship units as outlined below or SP. Yeah, okay. I'm guessing my way of reading these rules caused distraction. Not surprising. This is why I do it on camera, right? Like, I'm sure to get through most of it. It definitely helps.
from the nominal infinite dumps in Sicily to Tripoli. Yeah, so I have infinite supply in Sicily. Repeat this process each turn. Weather has no effect unless stated otherwise. Reinforcements first appear in Sicily at the old and new boxes. They're first placed in the new box. If the old box is empty, you shift the units in the new box into the old box. However, no units can move from the new to the old box if any non-replacement unit remains in the old box. Only units in the old box can be shipped to the map. Replacements automatically go in the old box and can be shipped to the map whenever shipping allowance allows for it, or they can rebuild right there. Replacements do not interfere with the movement of units from the new box to the old box. Units are always in supply in either box. Okay, and air units do not go through this. So what is happening with all of this discussion? When you first get units, they go in here. If the old box is empty, minus replacement points, you shift the new units into the old box. You're only allowed to deploy from the old box. And what that all means is that if you start stacking forces and not bringing them into Tripoli, you're not going to get the new stuff. You've got to bring everything in, including like shitty Italian divisions and stuff that have no point for you to use on the board. You've got to bring everything in if you want to start, getting better units. So you can't just like haul supplies in and the best units. That's essentially what you're going to fight the war with. There's a lot of crap that you just don't want to use, but you still have to ship that crap to North Africa. However, you have an option always on whether or not you want to prioritize supplies over troops. Supplies and replacements over troops. Okay. Tripoli dump rot. That sounds wonderful. The ability of the Axis to maintain enormous stocks of supplies in Tripoli is limited by the use of these stocks by the various garrisons. Destroy 25% of the total SPs in the Tripoli box at the beginning of the first Axis player turn each month. Count all SPs in the box, but ignore those loaded on trucks, organic or otherwise. So even if you're emphasizing trying to build up a nice supply stock, getting it in Tripoli doesn't really help you. You're gonna eat up excess of that. So you got to be kind of careful with that. Another thing to kind of force you not just to absolutely prioritize supplies for everything else. Of course, the fact that you can't control how many trucks you're sending, right? This is the real problem. You can't like deprioritize an Italian division in favor of trucks. And also you have a limitation how many trucks you can get. You can capture them though. That's standard rules. Okay, higher command requirements. Mussolini. The Italian commanders had no option to refuse to invade Egypt in late 1940. Neither do you. You must capture Sidi Barrani before 15th October 40. Like I mentioned before, it is possible, let's see here, for the British to put some crappy shit in the way. Not a lot. They didn't have a lot that was flexible enough to be placed there. I see it as just give it to them. It's not worth losing units that might be useful for something. So for example, these really crappy French Marines, horrible unit. Caused more problems. Like it would have been better not to even have it. This could actually be sent back and used for certain kind of garrisoning duties, say of your supply routes and whatnot. You don't have to worry about extenders in this game, but whatever. They must have the following in Egypt, east of the border, on or after 15th September. and east of the Mussolini line after the 15th October turn. And it's like a corps headquarters, 3 divisions in artillery, and 5 other units. And in addition, they have a big slew of units they have to have within Egypt at all, which is of some importance because, let's see, the Mussolini line's right here. There's not a lot of distance between the two, but if we look, like Solom is within Egypt. So, we can kind of help defend Bardia without it overextending too much. Sidi al-Barani is the Mussolini line. I don't know if I want to go chasing after the Mersa Matrua victory condition, but that's an interesting situation because to get that would be a massive, it's an automatic victory and whatnot. I don't think we stop playing if I do that. Because it wouldn't actually stop the British response, right? And here's the thing. If you happen to capture this somehow, it probably means there are British units in reserve that have fallen back. They don't want you to take it, though. Okay. You don't get much for it, so it's not like it's going to help. It's going to help in your capabilities, particularly. These 2 sets of units are separate. Once a unit crosses the border or Mussolini line, it cannot retreat across it. If it's attempting or forced to do so, it'll be destroyed. Those units that are destroyed still count for your requirements. You don't have to maintain some kind of garrison or anything. This has nothing to do with anything except try hard. Okay. Units used to fulfill the in Egypt but not necessarily across Mussolini line requirement can retreat into Libya if the Allies recapture Sidi Barani or any Allied unit crosses the border into Libya. And this includes a raid. Okay, so units that you rebuild that were destroyed fulfilling that requirement don't have to go back and try to fulfill it. You're allowed to go beyond the minimums, of course. I think the guys who have to be, so the way this is done, units used to fulfill in Egypt but not necessarily across the Mussolini line, those units are allowed to retreat back into Libya, but what had to go across the Mussolini line has to essentially work as hard as it can, to defend the Sidi al-Barani. You're not going to get a free pass where you can fall back behind the Mussolini line with those units. Those units pretty much have to die. Italian sudden death win if they get Mersa Matrua before January 41. No running away, no Axis ground unit, KG, or leader can move into 1935. That's the El Aguila area. From the rest of the map, or ship back to Tripoli prior to 1st of March 41. Axis units in Tripoli can move to the map area, but once they're there, they fall under these restrictions. So you can't just surrender the entire map by running away with the entire Italian army. I don't know. Given how much trouble I'm probably going to have conducting offensives, etc., and keeping my supply in line, I am guessing that the British Operation Compass and its follow-up is not going to be anywhere near as effective as the historical situation was. I'm just guessing that I am going to fuck something up. Protecting Italian privates. No, private property. The Axis player cannot damage any port or barrage, Benghazi, Tobruk, or Bardia until February of 41, even if occupied by the Allies. No Axis bridging equipment. German Axis headquarters and other engineers cannot execute bridging capability. No engineer unit bridges over the Nile, even if you get there. Allied bridging capability is intact for what it is worth. Bridging cannot be used to cross wadis. There's no water for the pontoons. And if they're swollen, there's too much current, so screw you. In addition to the requirements of the series, Axis can only repair hits on turns 1 and 15 of each month on ports. This slows the speed of port repair, reflecting a lack of available heavy equipment. Italian infantry divisions. There are a lot of single-counter Italian infantry divisions in the game. These cannot be broken down into breakdown regiments. That's cool, because I would probably not do it anyway. When Pistoia division was sent to Rommel, it has instructions not to cross the border into Egypt. You're under that same restriction. The San Giorgio. There's that ship there. This cruiser is sitting on the bottom of Tobruk Harbor. It cannot move, it is destroyed when any Allied unit enters Tobruk, and it does not add to the defense strength of Tobruk. It can't be used as a step loss in combat or barrage result, and can't be sunk. Other than that, it's just another zero movement artillery unit. The Littorio Armored Division. Still in the process of forming when shipped to Africa. As such, the units suffer a penalty to their action rating. This is similar to the training rules that the Allies have. It's specific to one Italian division. I don't know what I'm going to do. I probably will try to mark it to remind myself, because otherwise I'm just never going to remember by keeping it on the same track as the Allied stuff. Until August of 42, units transferred out of Littorio according to the Axis order of arrival are freed from this rule. As an option, Littorio can retain those units transferred out of it, but if you choose to do so, they keep that penalty. You can also choose to replace a small Italian small artillery regiment with a larger one, and if you do this, that's free. Why would you not want to take a bigger artillery unit? Well, the bigger artillery unit generates more barrage points. More barrage points is going to cost you more supply to generate, and you probably have more than enough artillery anywhere. I'm just like, I don't know. It's sort of like, it's a free option. Why is it a free option? Because who the hell cares? And it may be a smaller unit, so it takes less shipping to send the small one. Basically, my guess is the full artillery was available, but the decision was made not to send it all. Okay. Pasta roll. Hey, you can't have a North Africa game without a pasta roll. Because of Campaign North Africa and the huge blowback that Berg got for inserting a pasta rule and then kind of acting like, and I don't believe him 1 minute with this. He's like, oh, I inserted that as a joke. You know, I don't buy it. I think he actually fucking made a mistake and was, because was a weird creature. And I could see him using that kind of defense line. But anyway, here, there isn't a pasta roll. Except that you have to go to an Italian restaurant after completing this, or after completing a month of it each time. Yeah. Just making fun of it. The camel cavalry is considered cavalry for purposes of the series optional rule number 3. I don't know. That's either baked in or not. It counts as cavalry. And whatever. There's not a lot of difference. It's like faster infantry, essentially. Italian paratroopers, death from above. All Italian and Libyan parachute and commando units are all paradrop capable. However, they have an additional penalty on the airdrop table. Basically, their parachutes were not well designed. There are not enough CR-42, I think they're bombers, air units. In the event that you fail to lose any, you may get shorted some reinforcements for that. From German entry until October of 41, all German units have a -1 modifier to their action ratings for all purposes. And then they go to their printed value. Now this is kind of funny because they were incredibly effective in that period of time. They covered a lot of ground, mainly because there's nothing of all that much importance up in that kind of Cyrenaica bulge up there. And, you know, but the truth of the matter was the German troops were not ready to be in the desert. So effective as they were, they weren't in that great shape. Okay, we talked about the Flieger Corps earlier. This operates around the fringes of play. The FK is either active, the Freikorps, or inactive, referring to the FK, not the air units in it, in its basic duties of suppressing Malta and protecting Allied shipping. It activates and deactivates according to random events or the historical order of arrival, depending on which you choose. It will always start on the 1st of January 41. When it's active, its air units can be detached to direct use in Africa on the game map based on a selection of air units listed on the Malta table modifier base listing. The grouping of air units listed are those that can be chosen. FK units released to the map are shown by those marked with large white X's. And that sounds, you know, a little weird. Well, they're these guys. They look like infantry from the, from like, well, I'm thinking Napoleon's Art of War, but I think it goes back to, you know, the Napoleon at Waterloo game that had that. And I'm trying to remember if the Zucker ones, I think they still have that same visual. It's weird. Like I have a couple of the modern battles and they've done. Okay. FK units cannot be detached the same month as the FK activates. At the earliest, you can detach from the month after. If a detached FK unit is reduced or destroyed, it must immediately be brought back up to full strength by you exchanging non-FK air units of the same type for it. Or you can spend replacements to rebuild it. When the FK is inactive, the detached units are withdrawn from the map. All German parachute units are paradrop capable without the nasty +1 for Italian parachutes. No German commandos are paradrop capable, which feels kind of like, this is like weird. We have this here. Oh, we've got Italian and German special rules. That's what's going on here. All right, I'm going to pause. We don't have a hell of a lot more. The optional rules I am going to leave alone. They're going to complicate the game a little bit. And I think I'm going to have enough trouble as it is. Earlier we were discussing the series optional rules, which I'm absolutely ignoring for, 2.0i because we're using a different rule set, which probably incorporates many of them, where the optional rule, but I may end up pulling, I doubt that I will use anything from the 4.3 options, but whatever. I'll let you know if I am. But the options for the series are prototype rules. And I talked about that. That's not the case with these things. These are your more traditional optional rules.
a little bit more complexity for a little bit more realism, or maybe some trade-offs in the other direction that were chosen, that were chosen against simply because they didn't really give as much value as desired or whatever. And in general, that's the basic thing, is that, maybe you want to use these, but most of them are going to be kind of like just specialized cases. Certain players will really, really want to see something or not. Funny, it's not that bad, but it was so pretty before. I was thinking about, hey, I'll go down to the park or whatever. I had to take a dump, and now it just doesn't look that good. It's cloudy and everything. There's nothing terrible about it. It's just there's a lot less excitement about like the idea of making it outside and doing stuff, which is it's one of the things I liked about Phoenix. The weather was relatively consistent, like except for the Scirocco's and whatnot. It was usually just always clear sky and nothing going on, and warmer than expected. Like, it doesn't even feel warm now. It's gotten 5 degrees warmer than it was when I spoke last time, but according to my little app. But it doesn't feel it because the sun's gone, or at least obscured. Well, it's gotten a little prettier again. It's still cloudy, but I did check to see, and the river is actually not very flooded. In fact, it was significantly worse a few days ago, and apparently nothing big is going on right now. All right, let's look at the Allied rules. All right, so hip shoots for the Allies don't start until September of 41. Now we're going to be in September of 40 at the beginning of the game. This is important because hip shoots are basically your way of getting barrages going, well, by air at least, for overruns and stuff like that, and can be really, really effective in terms of the mobile war. So October 41, all Commonwealth units get hip shoot and retain it until the end of the game. U.S. air units will never get it. But remember, you can kind of trade U.S. planes into British. Again, that's a matter probably more of supplying equipment, but you can't really trade it, but you can combine them, and you'd probably want to make it into British ones because of this capability. 1935, the El Águila hex, the Allies can't enter it. Well, actually, it's not. It's beyond El Águila. The Allies can't enter it. If it's forced to do so, it's destroyed. 6 Australians. In scenarios starting 12th of September 40, the 6th Australian is confined to the hex of Helwan. Okay, we're going to have a lot of these kind of little special roles going on, right? Indian and 2 New Zealand. These units are retained in the area around Mersa Matrua until released by the Allied order of arrival. Okay. The restriction zone. Hexes within 3 of D3606. Is that Alexandria? Yeah, that's the Alexandria. And that's this, I don't remember where it is. That's this box here. Initially, the Polish Carpathian Brigade is restricted here. Later, the 6th Australian and Polish Lancers are similarly confined. Just units cannot exit the zone, but they're automatically released if an Axis unit moves adjacent to Mersa Matrua or an Axis unit enters map E at all.
Nominal headquarters. All friendly city and village hexes can be used by the allied player as nominal headquarters to rebuild units. This is a big deal. Like, normally you don't have, like, rebuilding anywhere. It's so you don't have to devote a headquarters back to Cairo or Alexandria or whatever. What are villages? What the hell are they? Like, I expect them to be like points of interest, right? Okay, a little scattered. A few buildings. Whereas we have minor and major cities, yeah, okay. I may have some difficulty telling the difference in some cases, I don't know. Not between the colors of the minor and major cities, but between the villages and the small minor cities. It's kind of weird. So we got a village here, I guess. Okay. Players can either elect to receive the Tiger Convoy historically or on demand, but they must decide which to use before play begins. In the former case, the convoy arrives the turn it did historically in May of 41. If you elect to have it on demand, the allied player can demand it once, and that demand can be any time after April 41. I don't see any reason why the allies wouldn't want it on demand. I'm okay with that. But must occur before Crete falls. On the odd chance the player fails to demand it before Crete falls, too bad, they don't get it. The Tiger Convoy will be 5 equipment replacements and a Hurricane 1 as reinforcements. Historical losses have already been deducted. Place the Hurricane 1 at any Allied air base the turn after the main body. I also can't see not demanding it as soon as possible, which essentially gives you the historical, right? It gives you a little earlier. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't want it. The World box. Oh, there it is. Units and replacements arriving as reinforcements can be stored here as desired. This can be done when remaining port capacity doesn't allow arrival on the turn given on the order of arrival, or because the player just wants to leave them somewhere else for whatever. But this is a good place to set up your next turn's reinforcements while you're waiting for your enemy to figure out their turn. Great. Okay. It is useful in that. There's no question there. Withdrawals. Before play begins, the Allied has to choose to use historical or variable. I'm going to use variable. For most campaign, I suggest using variable. Just keep the sides guessing what's happening in the outside world, which is more realistic. Units return, if they do, with the same internal stock, status, step losses, loaded or unloaded condition as they left. But they lose mode and disordered information. Yeah. Roll an 1166 on the Allied variable withdrawal and return each game turn right after rolling for variable reinforcements each turn. I'm trying to remember where this shit is. I would guess it's in here. I'm always guessing it's in here. This looks like charts and tables, but it's never in here. What's up with that? Yeah, I don't know where the hell it is. There we go. Withdrawal and return, but we have a variable reinforcement table as well, which I do not know where that is. I don't know, but I'll have to find this stuff. Oh, there it is. And that's just your equipment, your replacement points. So that's not a big deal. Where are we? You have 4 turns to get the units off the map, just like with the Greek situation. This removal has no effect on Allied coastal or port. The instant the unit reaches a port, you remove it to the deployment box. That's going to be one of these, which tells you, it has different unit types and what, which isn't terribly helpful, to be honest, except that it's important because only a certain number of units are allowed in the box. Place it in one of the slots provided. Fuel must be expended to move the unit to the port. The chosen unit can come from any formation if it's of the type required and follows the notes at the bottom of the table. Each deployment box has one or more brown slots in it. Each slot shows the unit type or types that can be placed in that. If all the slots of a box of a particular type are filled and another withdrawal of that type is called for, the box has reached its limit for that unit type and the withdrawal is ignored. However, units that are within their 4-turn grace and have been called to withdraw don't count against that box, so you could actually end up withdrawing more units if you drag your feet than you would if you could quickly shift them to ports and get them the hell out of there, which is weird. So you can end up overfilling. Also note that the Greek deployment box only has a slot for one variable brigade. This slot has nothing to do. I'm looking for the Greek deployment box. I'm not seeing it. You've got 4 here. The glare was keeping me from seeing that there was a unit there. Okay. This has nothing to do with the Greek campaign. Nor does it remove any Greek deployment requirements because it's filled. In any case where a deployment box becomes empty, leaving nothing but one or more organic trucks and no combat units, the trucks will be returned with the last departing combat unit. Trucks won't be left behind by themselves, even if other units are on their way to the box but haven't yet reached. If the first withdrawal from a formation is its organic truck, withdraw the truck normally, but then it returns with the last unit of that formation to return from the box. So it can actually show up early. It just can't be left behind when something gets withdrawn. Historical withdrawals rigorously follow the Allied historical withdrawal segment, and you just follow what it tells you. Series rules for divisional integrity. Multi-unit division trace requirements do not apply to any Allied unit. This is a big deal. You're allowed to spread your divisions up a little bit. 7th Armored Division, the early model and the later one. Aside from the usual organizational changes inflicted on the British player, the 7th Armored Division offers a special case. It begins the campaign with its armor and support elements broken down into battalions until these are destroyed or disbanded. And this is covered with some of these units here. Until the units are destroyed or disbanded, the player cannot rebuild their parent brigades, the 4th Armored, 7th Armored, and 7th Support. Once the little units are destroyed or pulled from play by the player, the larger units are built by replacements, but not until then. And all kind of discussion of the Desert Rats. All right, now we got a mess. The Allied Order of Arrival talks about brigade and support groups. Basically, this concept of brigade groups was instituted partway through the campaign, and then Monty abandoned it. And let's talk about it. While in brigade groups, and this is going to be dictated by the reinforcements. While in brigade groups, all Commonwealth infantry brigades have an intrinsic artillery barrage strength of 5 and a range of 1 while at full strength. Yeah, I'm going to remember this. But who cares? It's only artillery. I don't want to use it. 3 barrage points after losing a step. With the exceptions below, brigade groups are in effect from 12th of September 40, the beginning of the game, until 26th August 42. But armored brigade groups get added on the 8th of February of 42. And I assume then get withdrawn. There are two exceptions to this. Green units do not fall under brigade groups. They become so when they finally become normal, and they do not get the intrinsic artillery. Until the 1st of January 41, the 4th Indian Division is not organized into brigade groups, and its brigades have no intrinsic artillery. It does have, however, a divisional artillery brigade. And boy, I thought this was something else, like they call it Divardi Brigade. When I first saw Divardi, I'm like, wow, that's an interesting name for a British unit. Yeah, okay. But there are a lot of them. In January 41, as per the Allied order of arrival, the division's brigades reform into brigade groups, get their intrinsic artillery, and then loose the Divardi Brigade. They don't lose it, they loose it. Support group units have their intrinsic artillery strength printed on their counters, and such units have a range of 3, not 1. Armored brigades form into brigade groups on the 8th of February 42 and have the same intrinsic artillery as the infantry brigade groups. At this point, they also become red armor rather than yellow armor. One of the brigades is always like that, so the counter is printed red. The color change is the result of the assignment of organic infantry to the brigades at this point. The conditions last until the end of the campaign. However, when you hit August 42, day 26, the intrinsic artillery vanishes. Oh, this is going to be a fucking nightmare to cope with. Like, you know. These are the kind of things that I am guaranteed to not be able to remember what the hell is up with them. How big a deal will it be? I don't know. We'll see. But it was little bits like this, although more general, that fucked me up with Central Front. There's no question about that. When you're hitting, you know, these little rolls, and yeah. And here, I consider them more chromy than I do in the Central Front series, because there, it's like, again, more general. When brigade groups end, all of the above ceases to be, and the Commonwealth divisions get their Divardi brigades. All these changes are noted with reminders on the Allied order of arrival. Sure, I'll read it in the Allied order of arrival, but, you know, counters that are yellow and turn to red. You know what might help? A little symbol, like, I don't know what, you know, because whatever you do inside, so like if you have an armored unit and you put like a little red dot inside of it, it's going to kind of look like self-propelled artillery at that point. If you know, put a divide across it, like a line dividing it, either splitting the color or whatever, it's going to look like armored cav, you know, because you're playing with like two different pieces of information here, but they do kind of lend into each other. So any kind of color division within the framework is going to cause issues. I do have a little red Sharpie, and I may end up defacing my counters to indicate for the armor the differentiation. Like put a little red dot, maybe in the top left corner of, you know, I'm thinking like up in there somewhere. Within the actual unit symbol, so that I have some kind of indication and a reminder. Of course, I have to remember to have that reminder, and that's going to be problematic as well. But there will be a reminder in the order of battle, so at least there's that. Where are we? Each 5 barrage points available to a unit intrinsically represents 1 battalion firing for those paying SPs for artillery barrages the old-fashioned way. Well, we're not doing that. Intrinsic artillery is in reserve or not. as per the entire brigade. The intrinsic fire strength of a brigade in move mode, other than support group, is 3 at full strength. Yeah, okay. Unit training. I'm not that worried about the artillery because, quite honestly, you don't want to use your artillery. Like, it's really, really helpful, but there ain't going to be the supplies to use it, is what I learned from the compass scenario. Of course, probably going to learn the opposite, which is you can't succeed in an attack if you don't use your artillery and get those disorganized results. But, whatever. Unit training. Some Commonwealth units arrive set up with training markers. These markers indicate that the division is not fully trained at that point, and they'll be treated as green units. I think we already talked a little bit about this. Units which do not have such markers and those which are in the normal box in the training track function as normal at all times. The system only tracks divisional formations. There's no such system for independent units, which kind of allows the independent British units to be more effective than they probably should be early in the campaign. Such is. Once trained, the unit remains that way for the rest of the game. Leave the marker in the normal box, even if it's withdrawn, as its normal status remains if it returns. A green unit is any unit with the divisional training marker in a box other than the normal. Green units have their action rating reduced by 1. They have no intrinsic artillery during the period of brigade groups, and they cannot move during a sandstorm. Okay. Unlocked training markers advance 1 box up the training track at the start of the first game turn of each calendar month, regardless of when the marker arrived there as a reinforcement, how many units of the division are in play, whatever. If the division has been withdrawn, yeah. Once the marker reaches the normal box, it stays there for the rest of the game. You're free to use the division in training in any manner you like. Given the green unit effects above, there's no further restrictions because the unit's not fully trained. Furthermore, nothing the unit might do on the map affects its advance of training marker, even if isolated in a pocket, starving to death. The marker still advances each month. There's no requirement to sit in the Delta or wherever to train. These divisions are free for on-the-job training. Locked. Some training markers enter play as green and locked. This means they're placed into the locked box and within the green box. Locked markers do not advance with the others on the track each month. When the order of arrival announces it's unlocked, you slide it out of the locked box into the regular green box, and then it will start moving up the training track. Captured Italian tanks. I've already talked about these. Numerous Italian vehicles were found in Bardia, Tobruk, and Benghazi. As the Commonwealth found its own vehicles falling by the wayside, they pressed some of the Italians in. These were used to remount certain units. These units are awarded to the Commonwealth player when the city capture awards. While they cannot be rebuilt, they otherwise function exactly like any other unit. And this will only be the first time that they capture these. The Delta base repair operations. The British player has 4 Delta base engineering units. They do. These are the 3 Egyptian National Railway Rail Repair Battalions and the single Egyptian Port Engineering Battalion. Unlike other Egyptian units, these can be rebuilt and in all ways behave as regular Commonwealth units. Special rules pertaining to the Egyptian National Army do not apply to these, nor are these units optional, as are the ENA units. See, I kind of want to use the option for the ENA, because that's kind of cool. Is that these things? We'll get there. The Transjordan Arab Mechanized Legion. This unit is restricted to the area east of the Suez Canal, meaning it can be safely ignored unless the Axis is doing very well. It has a box around its movement allowance to make it clear that it's tracked. I don't know why they tell us that, but okay. This unit draws supply via the railway leading off the east edge of map E and is the only unit allowed to do so. Okay. I don't know if that means that I can draw supply for reasons other than trace. That's not clear in here. Probably doesn't matter. Like, again, it's not allowed across the Suez. Okay. Parachute assaults. No Commonwealth unit is parachute drop capable. The SAS technically is, but they function here truck mounted. The Senussi tribesmen. All right. Is that these? Yeah, I think so. No, maybe not. Maybe not. The Senussi Libyans were openly hostile to the Italian colonial troops and welcomed the British. 4 battalions of troops formed in their home villages to help the British effort. These units collectively make up the Libyan Arab Force, not to be confused with the Arab Refugee Pioneer Battalions. Once Senussi Battalion forms, the instant any Commonwealth attack-capable unit enters the following hexes for the first time: Tobruk, Girabub, Msous, and Mekhil. Let's just see. Does Tobruk have this listed there? It really should. I know where Tobruk is, so I'm gonna. Look at these Libyan Arab battalions. I don't know if I'm seeing it. I am having a really hard time. Like, see, this is one annoying thing. There's no clear one person should sit on one side of the map, the other should sit on the other. Most of the action is up here. You're going to be off and over on that side of the map, yet all of the boxes are facing in the same direction. And it just, I have to lean over and look to see if I see anything here. I got like these Libyan Arab battalions, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about these Senussi. And what were the other locations discussed? Girabub, which is over here, and most definitely does not have a little box with a capture award in it. Is there anything to indicate this? Not really. So how am I going to remember these? Well, the only way I can think of is that I will have these maybe? Visible. But there's more than 4 of these counters. There's a whole bunch of these. I don't know. Not sure how I'm going to track them and remember them. How big a deal are they? Probably not too much. They don't look very important. But they might be relatively valuable. Place the Senussi battalion with the location's designation on it in the hex. The instant following hexes for the first time: Tobruk, Girabub, Msous, and Mekhili. Okay. These units are automatically in trace supply if they can draw 5 movement points from their home location, which does not count against the limit of units that can trace off an oasis, where that's the case. If they move away from their home location, they must trace as other Commonwealth units. You wouldn't want to do that. If they need combat supply, the Commonwealth player has to give it to them normally. The Senussi location hexes are marked on the map. Each hex can only generate 1 such unit during the course of the game. Okay, they're marked on the map. How? It's not the oasis. I mean, do we have some kind of key that I'm missing here? We got room to tell you where the Sphinx is, but we do not. I don't see a Senussi border wire. What the fuck? Jesus. Okay, I don't remember any rules on that. I'm not seeing anything to distinguish this. You know, it's got a name. Yeah, that's great. But there are lots of places that have names. So I don't know how they're marked on there. Girabub, Masseuse, and McKillie. They're going to be in Libya. That's Jado. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I don't even know where these locations are. You know, they might be on the road, they might not. As we saw, Tobruk has one, and then this oasis has one. And what else? You know, I've got this. This is not one of them, apparently. And there's a whole bunch of them. There's more than 4. Let me pull them out. Tobruk, McKillie, Girabub, and Masseuse. That's these. Then I have these. These, I think, are the ones that come in that are spelled out at Tobruk. So, okay. But I don't know how. You know, obviously, if I put these things where I could see them better, I would have more of an answer. But when, you know, I kind of want them, like, I would put things in these capture award boxes as prizes. That might be helpful. I don't know where Masseuse and McKillie are. So I'm down 2. I don't have enough space to be able to completely clear the map and still have things in place. The game has a huge footprint, of course. And there are places where, because of folds and glare and whatnot, I don't really see. Here it looks like it's McKillie. I think Masseuse is up here. I seem to remember using Masseuse as a major supply area in Desert Fox. So let me look for that a little longer. I think it's actually marked on the map is with a more, a bolder, larger, actually probably just a larger size characters. Tobruk is definitely a heavier writing now. Of course, so is Alexandria, so take me that far on this. But Girabub is here, Giallo. You can see a difference in the size, and you can see a difference in the size. Benghazi is pretty damn dark, too. But Tobruk is Tobruk, okay? And what was the other one we found was El McKillie here, which is written and it's just McKillie elsewhere, is rather dark. There it is. Masseuse. Well, there goes that theory. So 3 of the 4 were written in rather large, heavier letters. This just doesn't look. I mean, me, it's a little bigger than that, but it's like, I don't know. Anyway, they're marked on the map. We'll see. Where am I? The Egyptian air unit, the Egyptians have a single gladiator, and it just counts as another Commonwealth air unit for the most part. The only restriction is that it cannot be based more than 25 hexes from the Suez Canal. Have I cheated? Probably. Yep. Okay. More than 25 from the Suez Canal. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, okay. All right, we're at 5 here. This is 20. There we go. All right, will not have an effect on play, probably. So, The setup instructions for it, I can't even fly beyond that, did not specify that. The setup for it anywhere in Egypt, one Egyptian gladiator. Not anywhere in Egypt. Okay. I am going to briefly look over the optional rules, come back with anything I want to talk about on them, because I think there might be, like I said, there's some that I kind of like the Egyptian National Army one. Like, it allows, it's such a non-effect, but it allows units that could go to either side. One of the first things is some of these options are baked into the random event table. What they say is, if you've already ruled it out, ignore it and the result and continue. Do not re-roll, effectively no result happened. But I kind of like them. Let's start looking at them. The Egyptian National Army. Egypt is neutral unless a random event announces it joins the war on one side or the other. Until then, its units cannot move, attack, or barrage unless an Axis attack-capable ground unit moves adjacent to them, or the Axis units enter any hex east of the Nile River. Neutral Egyptian units are ignored for supply purposes. They're considered to be supplied behind the scenes. Now, we have a few of them. The National Army truck, a couple of them set up. There's not a lot. Some stuff back here. They're on the board no matter what. They're considered normal Commonwealth, if not. If a supplied Axis unit crosses the Nile River and it's a Panzer or Italian tank, which is in trace supply in the next Axis phase, roll a die. On a 4 through 6, Egypt decides to join the Axis. On a 2 or a 3, it joins the Allies. On a 1, it remains neutral. You can only make this roll once per game. And if it's not made if Egypt has already joined the war. Also, the random events regarding Egypt can no longer occur if the roll has taken place. See, I don't like this. In any of the above cases, should an Egyptian unit choose to join a side, and it is currently stacked with units belonging to the enemy, the Egyptians must leave that hex in the friendly movement phase. If it requires fuel, it's assumed that they expended enough Egyptian National Army supply, completely nominal, in order to be fueled. No other effects. Should a random event or the Nile crossing cause Egypt to join the war, any units which have already chosen sides remain with the sides chosen. How do you choose sides? Hold on, I missed something. All right. An Axis-capable ground unit moving adjacent to a unit, or Axis units entering any hex east of the Nile. In the case of the former, the unit or units which had an Axis attack-capable ground unit adjacent to them, check to see which side they join. You roll a die per the Egyptian unit. If it's greater than the unit's action rating, the unit joins the Axis. Otherwise, it becomes a regular Allied combat unit. Okay. So yeah, that's the different thing. So some of the units could actually become activated. Now, what do we know about any of these? Well, I'm going to turn these guys upside down. I don't know about the truck. We've got a special rule on the truck. The Egyptian National Army organic truck does nothing until it or the Egyptian army as a whole joins one side or the other. The truck has an action rating of 3 for checking. It can be used only by Egyptian units belonging to the same side. It's reloaded from stocks of the new host nation. All right, we'll turn that over. Great. The 287 Sonderverband Regiment. If an Egyptian unit must check to choose sides and it's adjacent to this commando, then it automatically joins the Axis. This unit had Arab nationalists in it and probably would have. Okay. That is the first of the options. I'm going to swap batteries. I like that option. I really do. Yes, it adds some complexity. a little bit of, pure chrome type stuff. Otherwise, you have these crappy units and they're pro-allied essentially, which doesn't really feel correct either. Looking, see, these railroad and port guys are not affected by it. Those are not considered part of the Egyptian National Army. Okay. And I know what you're thinking, you're complaining already about the amount of chrome and the special rules and stuff you have to remember and deal with. Why are you dealing with these? Yeah, I know. But I do actually really like these kind of rules. All right, let's keep going. Escarpments. These features have a number of special effects. I think these are important, actually. The zones of control do not extend up escarpment hecksides even when they are passable because of a road or track. They extend down off an escarpment, though, regardless of the passability of the heckside, because you're able to command the view and fire onto it. Units adjacent to the high escarpment, see below, we'll talk about that, can spot for artillery and air barrage out to 3 hexes. If I remember it, sure, in clear weather. Furthermore, such spotters gain an additional shift to the right on the barrage table for targets they spot on the plane, which are 2 hexes away, and an additional shift of 2 columns right should the target be adjacent to them on the plane. Position on the high escarpment for which spotting rule would apply is the following hexes. Yeah, okay, that's not going to be easy to remember. So like 4339 C. They're all in C. Let's take a look if there's anything I can remember about them. 43. What does it be? That's why. Okay. Keep looking. 4339 is going to be there. If I can see something, 4229 would be this. 4129. 4028. Right. 40. No. I'm screwing up. Where did we start with? 4329. 4329 is going to be up here. They're kind of a darker line, I think. I think it's this thing. So from 4329, somewhere up there, there's going to be some escarpment. 4229, going down to 40, 28, 39, 27. Part of this line here. If I remember it, I remember it. If I don't, I don't. It probably isn't going to do much. The plane referred to above is the zone between these escarpments and the sea and does not include any hexes separated from those hexes along the sea by some other escarpment. Which... what's that shit again? Fuck me. Well, that's the escarpment. I'm confusing slopes for escarpment because, I don't know, because that's how I am. So it's part of this line here. Does that even work though? 43, yeah. 4228, yeah. So it's this. And I don't think it's too problematic. Well, we'll see. Note that appearances to the contrary, 4028 can see through, I don't know. Stripping units of trucks. No, I'm not doing it. This is in early testing, it was found that this truck stripping was easily abused and generally far more pain than it was worth. Campaign units did have their trucks stripped away for them for special purposes, but they tended to get them back, and it's not good. And I think this is the one, maybe not. No, there may be one that just says take all the German organic trucks and turn them into something else, into regular trucks. Armored cars, truck MPs, and recons. Armored car units are exempt from the restrictions of Series Rules 6.5C, yeah, that doesn't help me, stating that the truck movement point units can only make one recon before stopping or overrunning. Okay, if I remember it, sure. Advanced trace supply. Allow only ports with 1 SP or more capacity to provide full trace supply. I'm not going to worry about that. Okay. National options. Most of these do not please me. Most of them are alternatives to the main game, and the kind of things that you would pay victory points in some of the games. But since this one kind of doesn't really have victory points, it doesn't really work. So, and you know, it's weird because some of these are historical. Like, well, here's one. There's a bordello in the game. It appears to only show the luxury with which the Italian officers lived during the campaign. Use any desired mobile bordello rule, like the pasta rule. It's kind of like a joke, you know. It's like whatever. Likewise, the Allied ones include some funky stuff. They've got like this 8th Armored Division marker. There was no 8th Armored Division. It basically allows you to have a fake division that you can't really do anything with. And you can put up to 4 REs of units into the marker in order to take units off the map, create some surprise type elements. It just looks like a pain in the ass for how it works. Hey, what's the victory conditions? If it isn't obvious, it's a draw. While Rommel wasn't ordered to go and conquer the Nile Delta and the Suez Canal, he chose those objectives for himself. The Allies, meanwhile, must protect the Nile and Canal, but must also force the Axis back to the west edge of Map A in order to clear Africa. In either case, if you don't conquer the ground, you must clean the other player's clock to win the game, whatever that ends up meaning. If it's safe to say you have an army at the end of the game and he doesn't, you've won. Yeah. There's no victory conditions for this game. There really isn't. This is the pure argue it out after the game. You know, how did you do? How did it compare historically? Whatever. I don't know how I feel about that. It's funny, the buddy of mine who actually got into OCS before I did, not very well. And like, he bought them, didn't play them much. He's the guy I played Burma with. I think he had DAK. He absolutely hated the idea of a game without victory conditions, which is weird because he also played role-playing games in our group and had no problem, you know, with that kind of concept or anything like that. Totally understood that. But when I made an argument, so and like games like Once Upon a Time, he was very good at them, understood them, you know, wasn't trying overly to win the game, right? But when we were playing Europa Universalis, he seemed absolutely aghast at the concept that, look, the victory conditions for this game just don't work. They might lead you to do stupid things that'll ruin your nation. I just do what you want to do.
Was kind of the advice that I was giving to everyone. And he just seemed like, no, if you're not following the victory conditions, they're your guide for what you should be doing and whatnot. It's like, yeah, to some extent, but to another extent, the way they're designed in that game, they actually promote ahistorical behavior in some cases, So they're like, don't take them that seriously. And he just was like, no, it's absolutely important. It doesn't matter if it's balanced or not, but it's absolutely vital that you try to get the most victory points that you can. I'm like, yet, I don't remember him complaining about DAK basically not having any victory conditions whatsoever. So it's kind of weird though. And along similar lines, I have to decide what the fuck I'm doing with Wild Blue Yonder. I'm in the midst, I was trying to set up the second campaign, and I've got to make a decision. Am I going to play, or I was trying to set up my second campaign of it, and just ran into too many problems. Am I going to just call it, which I kind of want to do, because quite honestly, it's just not that much fun to play solo. Or do I want that to be kind of my nighttime game? And also I have the interesting question of, now that I have 2 working cameras of the same type, do I want to kind of run off both of them? Because I could play DAK with one camera and whatever else I'm doing on a totally different camera. So there's that too. I don't know the answer to these things. I don't know if I'm going to get started today. Like, I kind of have enough time, but I also want to resolve these big questions, because I've got like a ton of the setup information for Wild Blue Yonder on this camera's memory card, and it's like, yeah, and I don't know what the hell to do about that. Like, it's been there for 4 or 5 days now, and I haven't dealt with it. Is that it? Yeah, it came after the. I tried to do it after the power outage was finished. I'm a little frightened because Compass went so poorly for me. Like, I fucked up shit pretty badly. I probably would have gained something by going through the series rules and working through them. But 56 pages of rules. God, the paper's good on these. Still. I don't know what happened, but with like the line of battle stuff, they started using glossy pages for the rules, I think. And this came out later than that, I'm pretty sure. 2018, yeah. Yet it's still that. It's actually funny because the paper for this, it's good, but it's nowhere near as heavy. They at some point or another made the decision to just go all in on that. We're going to give you a real paper rule book, and I'm very glad that they didn't withdraw from that. But like I said, the line of battle stuff I think is kind of glossy. I think the BCS or whatever is kind of glossy when I looked at the rules for it, and it's really like, yeah, I'm not so sure I'm all that into getting gamers stuff anymore if they're going to be having non-paper rules. It's sort of synthetic, fake. I don't know what it is. It's like, it dissolves. It dissolves underwater somehow. You'd think it's glossy. It wouldn't. Nah, glossy paper actually dissolves more easily than normal paper would. I don't know if it's worse than newspaper, but anyway. Yeah, I do have some definite worries about playing this, but, well,
The tables said, you must do this one. You must do it now. And we'll give it a shot. All right, up it goes.